Thanks. I'll call this meeting of the Council Strategy Committee to order and state that the meeting has been duly proselytized and is duly constituted. Thanks, Fred, for laughing. And ask for a motion to approve the agenda. Thanks. And a second. Any adds, subtracts, multiplies, divides? Seeing none, I'll ask for a vote of all those in favor and opposed. That carries. Public participation. Not at this stage. We'll move to minutes of the prior meeting of January 12th. Can I have a motion to approve? Thanks. And a second? Anything? So I'll ask for those in favor of approval and opposed. That carries. Business arising. There being none, we'll move to unfinished business. Pam, that's you. Tell us what's new.
Okay, the first report is the draft water, sewer, and solid waste budget, which we saw at the last CSC meeting. Nothing has actually changed in these budgets, other than I provided some detail, just some queries that Council had asked on the water budget, a breakdown of the materials and supplies budget. Oh, sorry, a breakdown of the not the materials and supplies, the professional fees and contract services. So just as a reminder to Council, the process will be at the February 17 Council meeting. We go for first, second, and third reading of the utility bylaws with the rates. And we were proposing through these budgets that sewer would be a 0% increase. Solid waste will be approximately a 6% decrease. Of course, there's different rates for different types of dwellings, but on average, it will be a decrease of 6%. And right now, the water is holding at 5%. And that was with sort of a placeholder of $45,000 in capital. But you'll see when we go through the supplemental requests, we do now have some requests for water that add up to about 45. So there's some flexibility in there. If
45,000.
45,000,
okay.
Yes.
Yep.
But that is, although we're listing it on the supplementals, it was already included in the water budget because we knew there would probably be some supplemental requests for capital. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's the only number that I would say the 5% would be the minimum I would recommend as a rate increase for water. You could increase the fee increase and have money flow to reserves, or we can take a closer look at the supplementals. Some of the supplementals we're asking for, like there'll be 5 of certain items, and we can push that over 2 or 3 years, so we could reduce that number. So maybe if there's any questions about this, we can go through it. But once we've gone through the supplementals, if we wanted to come back to the water budget just to discuss the rate.
Well, I think let's knock them off, and then we don't have to come back and keep questions open in our heads.
Yeah.
So, Council, questions? Ron?
Bigger picture, and I'm referring to page 12 of 24. And I've already had an offline chat with Pam, so I'm fine with the budget numbers for the...
That's the next report.
Sorry, I'm rolling ahead
Okay.
here. I'm rolling right to the end.
Yeah, no, let's talk about water first.
Okay, nothing.
Okay, so I had a few. Anybody else? Fred, you look like you have a question.
I don't really have a question. There's a few things in that I'm happy to see, like ERBs are now viewed as maintenance, which I think they should be. Mm-hmm. That's a happy thing. I like that, well, generally I like the way this is going. I know we all agree it has to pay for itself, but I think the numbers make sense now. I mean, there's no sort of fuzziness to it anymore. I think, as much as I don't know how graceful way to put this, I don't like it when we do first, second, and third reading and all one thing, but it's so clear, I think, well, in this case, why not?
Mm-hmm. And Nye, Haley, and I, we did go through sort of line by line the budget this year, and we challenged things that we looked like we had been favorable for 2 or 3 years. We compared it to the actual, and we were somewhat ruthless. Not too ruthless, but with cutting budgets, and we tried to exactly define what we needed the money for and budget accordingly.
Yeah, I actually echo those sentiments, Fred. It's nice to know. I mean, it does result in, as we've established, the highest fees and services charged in the province, but so be it. Can I just ask about the notes, which are new? Sure. So, note 7, what is the $18,000 water distribution system modelling, and then the $92,000 number next to it?
Well, the $92,000 is the total, and the distribution modeling is, and I can probably speak to this more articulately, but it's the study that we're doing that's required if we get the grant. Yeah, maybe you can explain it better.
So in essence, what we need to do right now, in advance of getting the grant funding, is do some modeling. We need to know where the new tanks would go, what size the new tanks are, if the existing tanks are adequately sized or undersized or oversized.
So this is the supplement that I've been raving about to the IMP's base model. Would you not go straight to the people who've already built the model, or does this go out to tender again?
We went out to 3 different suppliers,
Including
the
whatever
people
they're
that
called,
did the
yeah.
model,
Yeah.
and this is the lowest price to do the modeling for that. So for both the water tanks and the PRVs, so PRVs will have to stay in ground, and we'll either have to relocate upstream or downstream of the existing. That'll mean changing the elevation settings on the PRVs, and we have cavitation in some of our valves already. So this would be properly sizing the valves to meet fire flow and what we see out there.
What's cavitation?
Cavitation is when water is put through immense pressure going through a PRV. So it's taking off the pressure, the elevation. It converts, it basically creates bubbles. It puts the water into a vapor state.
actually boils the water at
Essentially.
ambient temperature because
Yeah.
the pressure is so low.
Yeah.
Pulls such a huge vacuum over the top of the water that it boils at that temperature.
And what happens when the water boils is it actually pits the metal and deteriorates the inside of the valves.
Yeah.
So maintenance costs go up through the roof operating.
So this is over and above any work that is as a result of the IMP, including the. Did they ever end up giving us the model?
We have the model, correct.
But this is
Yes.
more detail.
This is more detail,
fine.
yeah.
Okay.
So
Thanks.
sorry, further to that, this is sort of the trick. We budgeted on the assumption we're going to get the grant. The reason I put this cost in is we have to pay it anyway, but if we do get the grant, this will be covered by the grant.
Correct.
So I was afraid I'd be cutting too bare
Up
if I
to
didn't put it in the
83%.
budget.
No, the full cost of this is in the grant
Got you.
funding that we
Yeah.
put.
But we have to do it anyway, so we may.
Yeah, so that's why
Even if we do it beforehand, we still get the grant money for it.
Yes, we
Okay.
can sort of backdate, and they're recognizing that with the tight time frame of the grant, we have to do some work ahead of time.
Okay.
So I felt, just to be slightly conservative, we should put it in the budget, recognizing that if we do get it, then we'd have 18,000 of savings, but the rest of the budget is stripped so bare, it might be nice to sort of have that.
Now, where is that 92,000 in the
It's on line,
line 7? Yeah.
line 7.
Yeah.
Or
yeah.
point, not
Good.
line 7, yeah.
Okay,
line
good.
7.
Thanks. And then only one final one, and that's on the final point. Allocation of public work salaries was adjusted in 2017 to reflect actual costs of
We-
2016.
Yeah, as actually sort of an average of 2015 and 2016.
fine.
It's an estimate of how much of the total public works salary should allocate to water, sewer, parks, and it's been off the last few years, so we did a bit of an adjustment.
So 290 is the
That's
answer.
right. So it's not a decrease in wages, it's just a decrease in wages allocated to water.
Okay, that's what I had. Thanks.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Okay, so I think we can move on
So we've got-
from
let's
water.
see, we'll go to the when we get to the supplementals and talk about water, we can revisit this and see the impact it would have on the budget, with the goal of having council agree to a rate to put forward in the first, second, and third reading of the
But
bylaw.
as I'm hearing,
Okay.
you're not, as a result of any work that happened from 2 weeks ago to now, nothing's changed in terms of the increase.
No.
Yeah.
We've, because we had, because there's a tighter deadline for this, staff had gone through this in great detail
Yeah.
prior to last week, unlike the budget we'll look at next, the general fund budget. There's been a lot of work done on that since the last meeting, because we have more time to set a rate for that.
Fine. Okay, and I suppose the same applies, colleagues, if you're amenable to the sewer and solid waste budgets. No numbers have changed. Is that correct, Pam?
Yep, essentially. I mean, the 2016, that's the other thing I wanted to stress, these 2016 numbers are constantly changing. No impact on the budget, but just if you're looking
Yeah.
at it, you're not. I didn't bother tracking all the changes because they change constantly. We're hoping to have fairly final numbers, or more final numbers for the February 7th meeting.
A $35,000 savings in solid waste. I mean, that's a lot.
It's a lot.
I mean, out of the total.
And better service.
And yes.
Plus glass recycling. Well, I mean, I assume they make money on glass recycling. Do they?
No, very little money on glass recycling. Yeah.
And on returnables, do they
Yeah.
actually get credit for?
They do. Yeah, it's through Multi Materials BC that they do most of their recycling. So I'm not fully conversant on the whole program.
Yeah, well, I mean, $35,000 savings out of a, in round numbers, $200,000 budget is a lot, 18%
That was
savings.
strictly because we went out for competitive bid.
Yeah, that's great. So we are actually going to decrease solid waste fees.
Yes.
That's a good news story.
Like I say, that's an average because it's not one set rate, but on average the fees will go down 6%. Yeah.
And point two, since we're now on the
Solid waste?
solid waste.
Okay.
That's properties which contain a secondary suite, so that's rented out, right? Not
Yes.
family, as
Yes,
in the,
yes,
okay.
that's right. And this again is something new. We used to all charge it, the revenue went to the admin, but it's a
It's
recovery
coming
of
to here.
utility fees, so
Right.
this is where we made a change and we attributed the revenue to the
Good
utilities.
change.
Now, that did result in a substantial increase to people who had a secondary suites water fee, because not only did they get the water all run into their fee, they also had to pay 40% on top of that, which used to be parcel tax. Did we hear any complaints?
Oh, I see.
This time last year?
No, I don't
It
think we
was-
got any claims. It would just be ones who had a secondary suite,
It-
who.
It was
weren't-
$700 instead of
But it only
50.
impacted, it was Brunswick Beach it impacted the most, and there's no,
No, it was.
No, everybody.
It was Lions
no, no,
Bay.
sorry,
Yeah,
Lions
it
Bay,
was
yes.
everybody. And we're going to see the same for that
Sewer.
with sewer now
Yes.
in Kelvin.
Yeah, and there's, I think, they said there were 6 secondary suites, yeah, same number that deferred taxes, there's 6 secondary suites.
Six acknowledged
Actually,
secondary
yeah.
suites. Yeah, well, that's a
5 or
different
6,
discussion we'll have
and,
another day.
But like I say, the intent, we'll be talking about this further tonight, but the intent of the 40% was always 40% of utilities. It was just an anomaly that the sewer fee happened to be on the property tax bill, but
Yeah.
we're not changing the intent of the secondary suite surcharge by doing this.
And the income is coming into the utilities, so it's actually lowering the bottom.
Yes, technically allows us to keep the fees down by attributing the revenue to the utility.
Yeah, what has always given me cause for pause is that what difference does it make if you have a relative in your suite as opposed to a renter as to how much water or sewer they use? So that's a larger concern that we have with secondary suites, but we'll address that next.
Relatives are constipating.
They don't drink as much. Or maybe they drink, but it's not water. That's my
Using that
relatives
joke
anyway.
For 5 years.
Oh, has he? Well, you got a laugher because I hadn't heard it before.
Okay, so that's a separate report. So I'll ask for a motion to receive that report. That is report 6A1. Thanks, and a second. I'll take that on the nod. Any further discussion beyond the somewhat detail we've had already? So all in favor of receipt and opposed, that carries. So we'll move on to the second one, Pam, which
So
is the
this-
2017
yes.
prelim budget.
So, as I had previously mentioned, this was very preliminary when you saw it 2 weeks ago, and now staff, basically now Haley and myself again, have gone through line by line like we did with the water. The numbers didn't change significantly, like some went up, some went down. The two important things to note, because they're not in supplementaries, because they're not really a supplementary request, we applied for the CN Railway grant, 2 grants, and it's an 80% funding. So the 20% costs, which total about $23,000 for our share of the work, is actually in this budget. As well, the ECOM radios, it's kind of a long history behind that, Eileen, but basically fires had radios given them by ECOM, and now we have to rent radios from them, and we've absorbed those costs in this budget as well. Because they are required, so it's a change from last year's budget to this year, but it's not really a supplemental in the fact that it's not optional. So in these numbers, those numbers are already in here.
And the CN, so we're assuming we're getting the CN grant?
Yes.
What if we don't?
If we don't, then what we would have to look at is, we have a few years to do that work, don't we?
Yes.
Nye had done a report, I think might have been before
Right.
your first council, or maybe before you were a council, about what the alternatives are. So I took the same approach as I did with the Clean Water Grant, assuming we're gonna get it, budgeted accordingly, and then we will just have to adjust if we don't get it.
Okay.
So if you go to page 12, this is sort of the summary page of the budget, and then we've got the attached backup that shows the details of each of the departments. But overall, after we look at the Build Canada. The reason I'm showing the Build Canada rebudget is we've rebudgeted the revenue, so I have to rebudget the expense. We come down to a surplus of $336,000, which in theory is what we now use for to cover off any supplementals, which we'll discuss next, as well as any contributions to reserves if we want to do that. And that number, sort of in the next 2 weeks, as more 2016 expenses come in, we'll fine-tune the budget again. I mean, we've done our best attempt, but I'm sure we'll look at it again and see some things we need to tweak. So that number is accurate, but it's not an absolute number. I mean, when you look at it again, it may have gone up or down a little bit depending on when we go through line by line in the budget. There may be some things we have missed, or we've made some inquiries about some of our costs that we're waiting for answers for, so we may have to tweak the budget.
We asked last time to see the loans subtotaled out so that we could tell what actual operating revenue and expenditure was, to see which direction we're heading in. I mean, rather than, how feasible is that? Rather than doing it with a calculator. I mean, I can do it, obviously.
Sorry, I didn't recall that question. You want to see the loans broken out?
Yeah, the grants and loans. Particularly because they're large, they're one-offs, they're not part of ongoing operations. I mean, look at the other grants going up 765%.
Right.
You know, that's extraordinary, obviously. But also they're predicated on success. So, you know, it'd be useful to have them separated out so we can see if it doesn't come about, what else are we on hook for?
Right, it is a net zero impact, though.
Yeah,
I have
I
the
know.
revenue coming in, and sorry, I didn't recall you making that request to show it out. It wouldn't impact the cash surplus at all.
You know, when I introduce Lions Bay out in the world, I say we're a community of X people, X houses, and we have a $3.3 million budget. Am I supposed to say we have a $7.4 million budget this year? No, obviously not. So I have to, but you have to back out some grants that we may or may not get. So I want to know, what's our budget size? Well, what is it? It's 3.1 this year if I back out the grants.
Well, generally, you can look at that by looking at, it's the expense line people would look at, the operating expense, which would be 3.1
Fair
budget.
enough. Yeah, okay.
And to be fair, sorry, I just hadn't realized you'd asked that. There's different ways we can present it when it actually goes. I mean, this is really, the purpose of this was really just to give us that 330,000 number, but we can work on presentation.
The presentation, I think, is because I don't want taxpayer to look at this and say $7.4 million.
Yeah, we can do subtotals, and we can have regular income and extraordinary income, and also too, by the time this budget is final, we will know if we've got the grants. So that would be
I mean, that will allow us to nail it down, but the number still remains. Yeah, I don't want people looking at this and say we have a $7.4 million
point
budget.
taken, and we can change how we present that. We can break up the revenues and show.
Okay, good. And then the rebudgets are here. I think we all understand that.
And the purpose of the rebudgets, it has no impact on the $336,000 because the idea is we've already taxed for this, and then we'll go into more detail at the next meeting. I'm hoping to do a preliminary year-end, like a fourth quarter review, to show what the bottom line actually was. These expenses will come from what we've already taxed, so it has no impact on the 336. It was more for transparency that I wanted council to see this. A lot of these. Some of these items we've already spent the money. It was just a transition over the year. We spent it in early January. But some of them we haven't spent, so we just wanted to. That's why I say proposed rebudgets. We'll talk about this when we look at the supplementals. But, you know, we get council's input on whether or not we can rebudget these numbers.
Okay, so, I mean, in terms of a substantive change to what we saw 2 weeks ago, I didn't see anything. Is that right?
It's really just I've added CN Rail, and we were able to add the e-com, and then some other, just sort of throughout, there were some expenses we reduced. In Public Works, again, like water, we went in and we just booked the consulting fees that we felt we needed. But it was sort of, kind of, as I used to say at West Vancouver, puts and takes. A lot of the numbers changed, but at the end of the day, the bottom line stayed relatively the same. But we were able to absorb those two costs, which was significant.
Now, what about supplementals?
Well, that's our next topic. So this was just showing you how I calculated the 336. Again, I've shown kind of a breakdown of each of the departments. I don't know if people had questions on any of that.
You know, quite frankly, I think, as Fred said, it's so believably, succinctly, and well presented now that it kind of stands by itself.
Okay. And if during the next couple of weeks, if council are looking at it and have any questions, please email me, and then I'll just respond to all of council that way, if they have any questions.
Okay, thanks, Pam. So now
now we
it
get
ends on page 24.
and I have it on table.
You have on tables. Do you want to just do that as part of this?
Yes, the reason it's on table is people were more efficient than I anticipated. I anticipated this meeting, we just go around the table and say what we wanted, but because you were sending them to me ahead of time, I was actually able to put together a report summarizing them all. So, we should have changed the agenda, shouldn't we?
Well, that's why I asked. I think we
Yeah.
just consider this part of 6A2.
Yeah.
So Pam, while you're administrating, I'll check the financial work schedule, so you're up to date on everything. But we will not see a fourth quarter 2016.
Sorry.
Interim.
Sorry, I didn't hear that. I apologize.
Excuse me, so just checking the financial timetable. You're up to date on everything, but we will not see a fourth quarter quarterly.
No, I mentioned that my plan is at the February 7th meeting to bring very preliminary. It's still very early to do that, but I'd like council to get a sense of what the surplus from 2016 will be after the rebudgets.
Going back to the consolidated for just one quick question, two things on the revenue. There's some massaging with the fire department, but it's explanatory and other stuff. But I see that the building permits are up north of $20,000.
Yes, and I believe I provided
That's a good number.
an explanation for that. It was really the fees. We can increase them substantially in the fees bylaw.
So it's in the runway then.
But also we have one very large house this year, so we put it in kind of as an extraordinary item. We'll get a very large building permit fee on that.
Okay.
So, I've had my first glance through here. Nothing blows the wig off my head.
So supplementals?
Yeah.
Okay. The only thing I was going to mention about the supplementals, I've shown the water, but just recognizing the 45,000 is already budgeted. So when we're looking at that sort of 330,000 we had of surplus, it's just the fire, sort of the upper part that has to be drawn from that. We don't have to draw the 45,000 from that number because it's already in that number. And because the plan this year, because we have the IMP, we'll do a full 5-year plan with kind of real numbers slotted in for the years. Keep that in mind when you're looking at the supplementals. Like it may be a note this year, but we'll budget it in the 2018. Like for example, Public Works, we don't have it on here, but needs a new forklift, so we're thinking of putting that in the 2018 budget. So as we go through this, if there's things you think of that you didn't ask for this year, but you're thinking, I would like them in the next 2 or 3 years, we can do sort of a separate list for the 5-year plan.
Mm-hmm.
So did you want to just start on fire? I met with the fire chief last week. So just again, as a kind of a reminder to council and an explanation for Eileen, the fire has sort of what we call their basic fire capital. It's really not a supplemental. It's just things they need to replenish every year.
Mm-hmm.
The list changes every year, but it tends to be in the range of $25,000 to $30,000. So that's what this total fire department capital maintenance is. That's sort of essentials. That's not to say those numbers can't be tweaked, but it's sort of the things that the fire chief has identified as essential this year. And then below the line is more his regular supplementals. These are things that he's liked, but would like, but they'll be discussed the same way the other supplementals are discussed. So the total is 50,000, but we've always broken the fire into sort of the two items. We used to do it for Public Works as well, but then we realized those sort of essentials were things that should really be in the operating budget, and they are. And I believe Fred spoke about it, PRVs. We used to have them as a supplemental capital request, but said that it was essential, but we've actually just put that right into the budget this year because it's really an operating item.
Okay, council?
Just looking at the fire budget, the top section, he's happy with those numbers?
He is, yeah, they came from in. The reason the turnout gear is a bit higher than usual is they cut the turnout gear last year to be able to
Well, I was
accommodate some
that
other
was the one I
items.
was flagging
Yeah.
as well. We approved a budget for turnout gear last year.
No, it was in one of the final changes of supplementals to be able to accommodate the shift the increase in the shift
We cut out
payment. No, we didn't, it was the fire,
No, but I
it was
mean,
the
it
fire
was
chief's
cut.
request, it was cut, yeah.
Okay, so this
So
is.
that's
yeah,
why the
okay.
18 is, it's higher than usual, but it's because there's a catch-up involved.
Okay.
But on the other hand, hose and fittings looks low to me. SCBA looks very low to me.
Because they just recently done a December purchase. It was in this year's budget, and
Oh, okay.
it's, they purchased some. In fact, I think some of it might even be in the rebudget list, because he's literally purchased it at the end of the
Oh,
year.
okay.
So, I mean, I have told him to go back and look at it, and if there's anything else he thinks of it. This came directly from Andrew, and he was very, very comfortable with it.
Can I ask, what is that container doing where the small fire truck parks?
That's our trailer for it's our archives. It's an
Is that the right
trailer.
place for it? Was that the only place for it?
I think it's the only place for it, and it's convenient and it's easy for us to get to.
Yeah.
And
The reason I ask is more for parking purposes. We have on a call, we have people parked all the way up around the corner. It's just a matter of time before somebody drives into a kid, while our fire people are parked all over the place, and they should be parked there. But okay, so some of these problems will be
Can the
addressed.
container be moved farther back?
I think we'd have to make a pad.
Well,
Yeah, well, that's a good idea.
I mean, there's kind of a big flat space.
Haley?
I believe it's the septic field just behind. On that
Oh,
first
that's
floor,
right
there's
there.
a
Yeah.
septic.
Okay.
plus, there's some property lines there. It's not. It looks like it's all fire, but we're not sure it's all fire property.
Mm. What about the library now?
We have.
That's
you'd have to-
convenient.
You might have to arm wrestle the Arts Council for it, but
Yes.
I guess it could
Well,
conceivably
yes, we
be
might, but
for storage. Yeah, actually, that's not a bad idea.
It's a pretty
would it be
expensive-
sufficient space?
Pretty expensive place for archiving. I don't know how
Well-
often you go up there.
But it's not being used now.
Okay, well, we haven't seen the proposal yet,
Yeah.
so I
Yeah.
won't even opine on what it
Yeah.
might be. But
But that would be
you
a
know.
very convenient location for it, actually, and there's shelves there, and which they're
Well,
struggling to get rid
You'd
of.
actually get to use the shelves instead of ripping
yeah,
it out.
that caused you an inordinate amount of pain.
Is it
Everything's
closed off in any way? Because I just had a meeting there today too.
It is,
so-
there's, I mean, that is one thing, we'd probably have to make sure it was really closed off.
A little more
but
secure,
it's
yeah.
got, I believe, a wooden type of accordion wall, is it? And then it locks, yeah.
Okay.
Wasn't the Arts Council wanting that space?
Yes.
Yes, that's what I
Yes.
said, but
Yeah,
arm
but
wrestling
they
the
have
Arts
pitch,
Council
yeah.
for it.
Oh,
And
I
the
see.
studios.
They can have the
And the
container.
series. But it's just, we're just talking about the
They wanted
library
a
part. We'd still
container.
we'd still have
They
the
have
two
a
meeting,
container.
we'd still have the two meeting rooms up there.
Yeah, it wouldn't take up
Yeah.
the meeting rooms.
Like, it's literally be unused now since the library
Yeah.
left.
Yeah, well, I haven't seen the Arts Council's request yet, but I suspect that once that comes out of the woodwork, I can think of quite a few other groups that also like to be considered for exclusive use of.
But it would
village
actually be
asset.
an excellent storage place, because as you'll see in one of my supplemental requests, we are running out of room in that trailer.
Okay, well, that's or may be that as it may, we still would need a tent. What's this industrial laundry?
It's basically it's a washing machine and a dryer, and the one they have now was secondhand, and it's literally on its last legs, and
What are they washing?
turnout gear.
Yeah,
It's a
WCB
WCB
requires
requirement.
it to be washed after calls, and whatnot, because of all the toxic stuff that's in there.
I'm sure, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it's apparently on its last legs.
Is it portable? Can it be reinstalled in other places? Should that
Imagine
come up?
so.
Okay.
I think it's just more the type you would get in a laundromat, very heavy duty, larger load type.
Oh, okay, yeah, most departments are using these ones as almost 6 feet high.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
They're not asking for that at all.
Yeah, he seemed to be comfortable with that price. I mean, again, actually, that's another thing I'll say about these supplementals. As we go through them, for the next meeting, we can come back with, we have quotes for a lot of it, but other things we could get quotes for, because we really want the numbers to be accurate this year, and the descriptions to be accurate.
And so they have a regular budget. This is supplemental
Yeah,
to
this
their
is,
regular budget?
what this is, we've got kind of the core operating budget we looked at, and these are what we call extras. So a lot of them are capital, some of them are operating. But sort of the process is, we figure out sort of how much money we have for these supplementals, and then we have a process that goes over probably at least 2 CSCs, where we go through them and we determine what we want. And then some of these, like this is a very preliminary list, we would go back and get quotes. I wanted to wait to see if anything was cut first, because we don't want to get quotes for something that ultimately isn't going to stay on the list. But
Right, it's just I'm looking at ropes, and then rope training is.
Oh, yes.
like, I
yeah, the
can't have
differential
ropes
is
without
this
the
is
training.
what the fire is the only one that's like this. It's although it's not really a supplemental. I could have actually put this right into the budget, but I like council to see it first because we could still tweak it a bit. But this, the 27.6 is the core things that the fire chief has said I absolutely need.
Okay.
And then the below is supplementals, though he still really wants them. There'd be more flexibility in those ones.
Okay,
Somewhat capital, but it's not really capital. It's
Yeah,
to
there's a
ma-
mixture here. I
long-term
don't do that,
expenditure.
yeah, I just do that segregation when I actually put it into the final budget. For our terms, it's the money we're approving, and then we'll decide if it's capital or,
So that means that we're looking at fire costs of $340,000 this year. Let's say in round numbers, $700 per taxpayer, or per average taxpayer. I don't know what that means. But $250,000 to run fire in a place of Lions Bay with a budget of $3.1 million. Exactly 10% of our budget is fire. Does that sound fair to us? Sound right?
When I look at the alternative of what insurance would be without them, I think it's
Yeah.
pretty inexpensive.
Well, I always hear that, and I assume it's high. I don't never seen a number, but I hear horrendous numbers. Yes, I mean there's that. The offset. Yeah.
Well, it's a gift too, with the volunteer aspect, you know, saving roughly, probably fully loaded 85 per man, plus the white shirts, it would be
Easily.
triple.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, imagine a fire chief earns 120.
I think
So-
you're a little
First
low
one,
on that
maybe,
one.
yeah.
Very small department would be there.
Yeah, fully loaded one. Yeah. So I mean, we're getting a bargain, but it's still not insubstantial. It's 10% of our budget. Okay, let's move on for now.
so the next request, I've called it council, but for the next meeting, I'm just gonna put it all together. These were just, this isn't the department it goes to, this is just who requested it, and I had got a list from Carl and some additional things from Ron, so I put them all in here.
why,
If I
why
could-
are we
So-
renaming council chambers?
We can't actually.
Oh, good.
Why?
Rather than doing the bun fight on this
Charter requires us to
unnumbered
have a
page.
council chambers for tax sale purposes. We have to have a room called council chambers.
Yeah, this is not capitalized. That's just what is the way the
No,
council
there's
meets.
there's a back and forth here
Oh, there
as
is.
well, yeah. No, we
Right.
have to, we have
You
to do
guys
that.
arm wrestle somewhere else.
The reason was because a lot more people use this than just council, and it sounds too old-fashioned exclusion. I don't really care one way or the other.
Well, they should feel honored to be using the council chamber.
See,
It's
that's,
a special place.
That-
Well, then they must
my
ask
feeling.
council every time.
No, you can,
Oh, you can devolve.
Definitely take this offline. Okay, and if I can lead on this one, because these are kind of bun fight items,
Well, let me do it because they're my asks rather.
Yeah,
So,
we actually have some questions about, some of them we don't understand what they are.
yeah,
too,
exactly.
so-
I suspected as much.
Just so that we could go and get some proper quotes.
So the AV suite, I think we all know what that is. That really entails a large TV screen, 60-inch TV screen. Last price at Costco, $820.
So you're talking about just a TV screen?
Plus
video
Chromecast
capacity
thing.
in the whole nine
Yeah.
yards.
Sorry, I didn't hear. A which?
a Chromecast stick, $60.
A what?
Chromecast.
What is that?
Where you throw it from the computer to the screen.
Okay.
It's about a 20-year-old thing. Thank you, Ron.
Hey,
so, why is the figure 3,000? Because that's only like 1,000 tops.
union
Because-
installment
Installation costs.
and wiring and junk.
Yeah, and electrical.
Yeah, but we already have like a 20-foot long HDMI cable.
Chromecast, no cable. But anyway, the number,
It's-
Well, no, you've
it's
given us
for-
the
for
information
the
we need.
cabinet.
Yeah.
no
That will
cabinet
hide it.
And the remote control.
comes with it.
Well, anyway, you've
And
given us
Dr.
the
Evil's
information we
chair.
need to get
Yeah,
to confirm the quote. So a 60-inch TV screen mounted on the wall
Yeah.
behind you.
end of story. Yeah, with a Chromecast, so that you don't have to have a cable. Well, okay, yeah, you'll have a cable for those laptops that don't Chromecast, but most of them do these days.
Okay.
Updates to mapping. I know this was just to remind staff that you've been talking about getting updates to mapping. That's probably a conservative number.
We've,
Well, so
I know
I thought
Mike-
it was evolving out of you had mentioned that you'd spoken to the guys who did this map and about adding things like
That.
topographical and whatnot.
Contours and
Yeah. So let Nye talk about what thoughts we've got in terms of the issues with spending money on this map versus spending money in different ways on mapping.
So essentially what you have is you have a fixed map. Right now, the water main information that was collected ages ago by a student, from what I understand, is
it wasn't ages ago, 2 years ago.
2 years ago,
Yeah.
is incorrect. There are water mains that are abandoned that are shown on this map. The naming conventions are wrong. We're not 100% sure about the accuracy of some of the pickup. So we had approached, as part of asset management,
Which is on
Pam
another page.
and Haley had approached a gentleman that provides GIS services. And basically what we're looking at is a computerized system that has a real-time map that we would vet and make changes to. And eventually that could be put online for residents to use and for council to use. Basically it would be an online mapping tool like you see at other municipalities, West Van, Burnaby.
Well, for that you need a TV screen. Oh, luckily
Oh,
we're budgeting. Yeah, that's handy. I'm all for that. However, this will be the third GIS project undertaken even while I've been around.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd like to know what's going to be different about this one to make this one work. That said, most certainly needs to be done. I also know that the people who put this map together have proposed something with a tool. I think they sent you the information, Peter. I think it was just before you came, no? But anyway, be that all as it may, sure. Is that in here as well?
It
About-
is.
That's part of the
Yeah,
asset
it's part
management
of the
thing?
whole asset management,
Yeah.
which we'll speak to on
Okay.
the next page,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, so the only other thing I wanted to do was to do what's called the LiDAR hillshade, which we got a quote. Peter, remind me what the quote was? $400, I think.
I think so.
Yeah. That is to get a thing about the yay big that it's essentially a look through the trees at where the flat spots are. So it's color shaded for flat spots. When proponents come in here, we can say here are flat spots in Lions Bay. Precious few, actually. So it's more a sort of a sales tool than a planning or development. Well, I guess it's a development tool. So I guess really what I'm saying is that if you have other plans for mapping, which, as you know what I went through to get this one, he said pointing at the map, I can reduce that 1,200 to 400.
Although, so, putting LiDAR on a map that's basically faulty to begin with in terms of the base map, is that a great idea? Or?
You mean in terms of the faultiness of this one?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's going to have nothing other than hillshade and slope. It comes straight out of the LiDAR data. He did say, the big challenge, that LiDAR was done when we did the Upper Bayview slope hazard assessment thing. The same people who do the LiDAR actually have the data set to the north and the south, but they want quite a bit extra to give it to us. The problem, of course, is that we need LiDAR for those 2 lots at the end of Kelvin Grove. This is 6 dots per meter, so it's not super res, but it's better than contour map.
So those 2 lots aren't included
They're
in the
not. They're
existing?
not in the data set because the data set was done around Bayview. But that's significantly extra. Let's just leave it there. I'll bring in a sort of a somewhat ortho look, which is it's a 3D look down at the LiDAR data. It shows you what it is, and it'll give you a sense of what I'd like to spend $400 on. It's sort of a sales tool, but if we can just leave it there for
Just
now.
change it to LiDAR map and say 400?
Yes, good. Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And then just the telecoms plan, just maybe a bit of an explanation? of what you
Yes,
meant
so
by that?
this was additional to the, remind me of the number that was budgeted last year, I think 18,000.
500 for this, it's a SCADA.
Is that what we called it?
Yeah,
Where am I getting 18,000 from then?
from the
18.5.
18.5.
Oh, 18.5,
Yeah,
sorry.
18.5, yeah, from the
So
SCADA budget. We
again,
have
this
that
was
on
more
the
a
list.
reminder saying, does council want to fund this? remember, the exaltation here is this must all be done this year.
Okay.
So there's no carryover here. So where is the carryover on that SCADA plan? by
It'll
the
be
way?
on the next page, so if we could probably take it off here, and when we get to the next page, we'll talk. I thought this was just a reminder, but I didn't want to be presumptuous and take it off.
That's all it is. 24 more
This
chairs.
is a little random. 24 additional.
2 dozen.
Any reason why?
We ran out the other day.
Oh, did we?
Mm.
Okay, because we were just going to do a count of how many we had, and there's no point getting more than what the capacity of the hall is, which is about 100.
110.
110. So, okay.
We had more than 110 at Remembrance Day.
But it was Remembrance Day where we ran out.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, but a good point.
Yeah. No,
So max out capacity perhaps is the
Okay.
request.
Okay.
I think Public Works did a count, and there's about 50 to 65 chairs.
No, it's more than that. We just, the other night, we had.
seated
one that
80.
out. There was about 80 chairs out.
Was there? Okay.
We'll do a count. I
Okay.
mean, we get your point. We ran out at Remembrance Day, so if we have the capacity for more, then you'd like us to budget.
So maybe the
Oh,
request is
storage.
max out the chair space.
But the storage, actually, yeah, we'd have to look at
Yeah.
the
No,
storage.
there is space. That whole
There is.
storage thing needs fixing anyway. We need to make bays to make it easy because it's residents putting chairs away on a Sunday, and they just, if we actually had things where they can slide the carts in and stuff, make it a lot easier.
We'll take
Okay.
a look at it.
So max out hall chairs is actually the name of that request. Landscaping plan. I don't know what it looks like, but this was more a reminder to say that I wanted a plan. Peter and I have discussed this to a certain extent. As you know, Modi is going to allocate us $20,000 as part of future endeavors for landscaping, whatever that is. I don't want that to be spent entirely on labor. I want some of it to go towards a plan. Starting with, Peter and I have discussed this, let's call it the rockery. It's really the weed bed outside the fire hall, all the way down to the bridge across Lions Bay Avenue. Just so that it looks like that, there's just a bunch of scrabbly blackberry bushes here in front of the hall. We just spent $1 million on this hall. Surely it should be treated somewhat. It's our biggest asset. Coloured uplighting. It's something. We've got a nice new notice board. The flagpoles are PVC pipe is a bit skew now, but just. I want it to look like it's supposed to look like that, rather than it looks like it sort of grew up that way. Lions Bay is 60 years old. It's getting shaggy. Let's at least make this, spend some of the money. Now, Peter's correct. They're getting a landscape architect will cost $20,000 just to have him come in the door. So, but we have talked about existing staff members having skills in this direction. So I just want to see a plan before we press the button on spending the money.
So just to add a little caveat, and that is, staff suspects that a good chunk of the money will be eaten up moving the material, the vegetated material. So
I agree, and that's why we want a plan to know where it's going to go, so we touch it once.
yeah,
rather
but
than,
that would be an in-house plan that says these
That's
are
fine.
the areas. We basically have already come up with that. We haven't gotten into specifics as to
Where's the dug
what
holes?
goes in these.
But there will be.
But yeah, I mean, we'll drill down on it in due course. But right now, we're kind of under the gun to come up with where things are going to go. So that's step one, and we can talk more about it on Thursday.
Fine. I mean, the point being, of course, that there's going to be a contractor out there using with one of those spade things. May as well get them to drop the trees in the holes, then drop them down at the works yard, and then now I'm sure those of you that have done it know how heavy those things are. You don't move those with muscle power; they're incredibly heavy. Cubic meter of dirt weighs a ton, metric ton. Okay, so I don't know what the number is, but I just want.
I'd hold the number. I think it's a bun fight for later.
So essentially, I'm saying an uplift of $2,500 over what Modi's going to give us.
You might be light.
I don't want to spend too much money on it, but I do want it to look like it's supposed to look like.
Yeah.
Didn't we have $1,000 if we spent that from that Horns project when they were filming? They donated $1,000 for.
Yes, we do. What
So,
a memory.
just
We
saved
have
you
It was the
$1,000.
Lions Bay Beach Park.
Oh, that's right. It has to be used for the Lions Bay Beach Park, so.
Okay, I see that's in
I
here
thought it
later.
was for
So
here. Okay.
okay, let's move on. Drop down projector, similar reason. Maybe that's all in the AV Suite budget. I already priced it out, so that's the link. The only thing is it requires some labor to install, and electrical. But there is electrical on the beam.
There's some other issues too in terms of where it might be mounted because of structural requirements. So just looking at what our options were for the larger screen for the public info meeting the other night, really there was nowhere else to put to hang the separate larger screen had we wanted to do so. So when we think about having a large projector screen, we really have to think about what kind of structural requirements to be involved with it as well. So, you know, whatever the cost of the screen is, I suspect it's going to be a lot more than $700.
Yeah,
but
I
also,
understand.
there's going to be structural improvements required.
Hanging off one of the beams at the end, I think, I suspect the beam can handle a 60-pound screen without even
Yeah, but
engineering. but-
just drawing our
Yeah, fine.
everyone's attention to the
So,
peripherals that would go with something like that.
that's the number I have in mind. I'm not asking for yes or no at this stage. Parking plan. The reason there's two numbers here is that I think some of the costs of the parking plan will be offset by additional revenue,
From,
parking fees. Because we don't have paid parking right now.
right, but I thought this year we were proposing just a trial of the
So what's the,
Yes, but,
what's the
Yeah.
expense?
Signage.
Signage, yeah. So staff can, we can fine tune that number, because I think it's excellent to have the placeholder in, and then
It's
we
a
can figure
placeholder
out
at
how
this
many
stage.
signs and what they cost, and we can fine tune.
And I
that.
don't even know yet until I see what the planning is, whether I even like the idea of paid parking yet. Because, for example, just to give you a sense of it, paid parking only works if it's enforced, meaning we need a bylaw officer. What we're going to, there's going to be somebody check if you have a parking pass on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and what about the rest? And the word will soon go out that you don't have to buy it. Don't.
So could I suggest maybe just to be conservative, we remove the revenue number for now,
Fine,
and
yeah.
just keep, because I definitely want the expense in there.
I do
for
want a
the
placeholder to
signage.
say there may, depending on developments, there may be revenue.
There could be, but being
Put a $1
being a
in there or
conservative
something.
accountant, we could,
Fine.
it'll be a bonus if we get it, but
Yeah.
then we'll know more. To me, we would put that into the 2018 year of the 5-year plan, some revenue is, because this will be our test year. Okay.
Fine. Okay, this is, council is, I know, aware of the hydrology study MOU that we're undertaking with UBC. It's not done yet. In fact, I'm still corresponding back and forth on a regular basis. But in order to, it's a sprat to catch a whale, they want to see some sort of municipal buy-in. So I was wondering if we wanted to budget something like $2,000 cash, in addition to the in-kind
In-kind,
staff
yeah.
help that we're going to give them. And, the IC, for example, will be billed out to the hydrology study at $100 an hour times 6 members every time we discuss it as an in-kind. It's completely nominal, but I'm talking about real money now.
Is 2,000 enough? We talked
Yeah, I think
previously
so.
about a larger number, but if you felt 2 would be
You know,
sufficient.
this is a luxury for
Yeah.
Little Lions Bay.
Yeah.
A 20-year hydrology
Oh,
study
no,
that may or may.
the lower the better for me. I just want to make sure that it would.
I don't know what the
if
number is,
any
but that's the
numbers
number
we
I
bandied about.
propose.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm not asking for yes or no at this stage. I'll move on as quickly as I can. Planner. I would like us to have a planner. But that's all I'm going to say on that.
I think that for 2017, we'd be better off concentrating on those particular consultants who can assist us with the projects that we have in the pipe for 2017. I think that adding a staff member at this point would be problematical for a few different reasons. One is I'm not sure what you get for $60,000, and whether that would really be a great spend for the level of expertise you get at that price. Secondly, we have nowhere to put another body. Thirdly, at that price, that's going to be a lower level person who will then be on our staff permanently and unionized. And so just not ready to take that plunge.
Fine.
So
Well, okay.
I
So if
think
it's not
that-
a staff member, it's consultant.
Yeah, so I've written in brackets consultant.
I did the same
or
thing.
The number is the same,
consultants.
I think.
I think you're probably right. We'll work on fine tuning that.
Yeah.
But
Do you have it anywhere else?
for
No, we kept
placeholder-
it there because we agreed with it.
Yeah, the resource for
Yes.
all the work
Yeah.
that's going to be.
Yes.
2017 is the year where we want to see some of this stuff come to fruition, and we're going to need resources.
Mhm.
Okay, so fine, we'll leave that there where it is. Fire review.
This, we're getting into Ron's area. So you had said, so 20 in total. He'd wanted a 5,000 budget plus 15.
It ain't happening. Let's just leave it.
What do you mean it ain't
So-
happening?
Why-
So I think Peter was going to speak.
Yeah, I'll speak to this. I
Okay.
wasn't sure if
Sure.
you wanted to
Sorry.
say something first or.
Nope.
Okay. there are certain things that I'm working on right now with the fire chief and the chief trainer, and there are certain things that I expect we're going to accomplish this year, and I'm not sure if we've got that anywhere else in the supplementals. Did you put in the records management?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
But I think that in terms of a long-term strategic review, let's push that to 2018. I think that we're going to make some significant headway this year, but I think that, let's push that off to 2018.
Ron, it's your request, and Fred, your area of expertise.
I think perhaps not at this meeting, if you can convince me at a later date what exactly is going to happen, and I'd listen again.
Ron and I have talked about this at length. I can conceive of a day in Lions Bay in the future where we will need to have a professional cadre of officers, staff housing or rent subsidized housing or what some kind of housing, plus a whole bunch more.
So when you speak of those kinds of consequential components that would be necessary to that kind of a plan, if that's the direction that we ended up going, those are steps that need to be addressed this year in terms of housing needs assessment, which I've spoken of previously.
Well, isn't that this?
No, that'd be in a different area, but a housing needs assessment would look at all kinds of different things, including this kind of a component. So
Okay, so are we going to talk about that later?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So we'll get to it then.
Kind of go through it line by line, but
I guess my ultimate piece on this one, Peter and Carl, is that a year ago, looking backward at this time and looking at that, it probably would have been a table pounding yes all around, given the events that were happening at the moment. And I'd hate to think that something like that should happen again, and we weren't ready for it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just that we're not doing the thing.
I agree. I think this is prudent leadership, and it means spending this kind of money. This is what we're here for.
So,
But Peter, the other thing is capacity, and quite frankly, it's your capacity.
Mm-hmm.
There's only one of you.
Actually, and Carl, that's where, whether it's the planner or other, or the fire review, or the emergency coordinator, I actually see in composite these numbers, however you slice and dice it, is council's, without hands up, hands down, willingness to support staff with hard cash. And, we've put 3 areas there, and if staff comes back and says, let's call this area that, and this area that, and then we'll push part of this off, well, that's fine, but I think from my perspective, at what is now the first cut at the bun fight here, until I'm convinced otherwise, I think certainly for the planner or consultant or fire review or however you're going to do this, and for the next topic below that too.
Yeah, all I know is ultimately I'm not looking for another study. I want a plan. Plans, not studies. So as long as we're heading in that vector, I can see pushing it off to a year when we can do it. But I think if I was to get nods around the table, I think the sense is sooner would be slightly better than too much later. So then it's a judgment call as to when that is.
I think also you were just concerned about the utilities, the money. We're talking money here, and if we're talking more staff people, we're talking permanently a lot of money. So I think it's something we do need to consider carefully before we jump and raise the taxes for that.
Well, maybe we don't raise taxes. Maybe we sell land, or who knows where the revenue comes from. But
if it's a staff person, it's eventually
ultimately,
yes, it's
fullness
going to
of
be
time,
in the
sure.
budget permanently.
Yeah, no, I'm aware of that, and I think it may yet be that we're not at the critical mass where we can afford that kind of resource, and so we'll have to continue paying for a learning curve to get somebody up to speed every time they come through the door. So it's false economy, but on the other hand, it's a non-commitment resource. So I understand that. It seems to me that you get a lot of bang for your buck with a planning department, opposed to a purchasing department, or opposed to a compliance department, or any other municipal department. The planners that I've seen operating, even in Metro, really contribute enormously to the sort of the ethos of the community.
And they are a department, they're not a person. We're gonna
Yeah,
get
okay, so
a
good point.
person or a half a person.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's about a half a person.
Well, we had thought we had,
Two-thirds.
you know, Anmore and Belcarra would be only too happy, but you know, I think we all recognise that they need to be geographically present, and walking the streets and seeing where the tree looks nice and the sunlight, and they need to be a resource. And I mean, you guys, I'm pointing at the West Van guys and the Pemberton guys. You know what planners do, and you know we need one, but can we get the right one just yet? I don't think so. So, so the fire review.
I tend to lean towards where Peter's going with this one, because I think last year's turmoil has passed, and I think the department's running quite well, and I think we've got a bit of breathing room. And I think if we're going to give instructions to somebody doing a review, we should have a pretty good idea where we want that review to go, like what areas to look in. If he reviews it and says, yeah, you've got a good fire department and sometime you're going to need to do whatever, is different than there's sort of a timeline burning down here, like a candle's burning down. Sooner or later you're going to have to pony up the big bucks, so let's start making that go. So I think it's going to take a little more discussion than just say we need a review, like a generic review. For example, when we did the one in 05 or whatever it was, the RFP for those things were so varied as to what each consultant was going to offer that it came back with more questions than answers. So I think we need to understand where we want to go with this before we even call out for an RFP or whatever.
Well, that's absolutely right. I think ultimately we need something to tell us what the framework is, and we can fill in the blanks, perhaps even. Maybe it's nowhere near that level of thing. Peter, this is your department, so...
Yeah, what I'm suggesting is that give me a little bit of time here to come forward with more or less, I'll call it a strategic outline. And as we go, we'll be looking to fill in the components of that outline, and so that you have some flesh hanging on the framework, so you can see, okay, well, this area looks okay, this area that we need to do a lot more work on, and by the end of the year, you know, as we head into budget next time around, we'll look at where we are and whether or not, you know, if we do want to do a review at that point, then hopefully it would be a lot more focused, saying, you know, we're satisfied with this model, or you know, I mean, the worst case scenario is, you know, we don't know what to do here. Do we blow up the model? Do we refine the model? Do we improve the model? Do we go with a different model? I'm hoping that we'll be a lot further down that road, and that we'll know a lot more about what works and what doesn't, and where we want to go. So, and what the costs are too. You know, we can.
Is this an OCP issue?
No,
How you want to
it's a-
handle fire in your community?
No, I don't think it's an OCP issue, other than, you know, hall improvements or fire truck replacements, or things that could be on a community amenity contribution list, for sure. But no, it's not an OCP type thing.
Okay, let's move on. Emergency Management Coordinator.
It's mine as well. I think I would actually categorize this one for fire review and the planner as I'd said, it's a reflection of putting a number at this point where council support staff, which really are running hard, running late at night, doing a lot of stuff. You know, whether we need, on the planner side, somebody doing specific work that the CAO and the current team can't do, or perish the thought that chief should have a stroke tomorrow and we don't have a plan, or in this case where we have an emergency situation. I mean, the emergency people have been pounding the table for years now. I mean, the thing is that this is just great until crap happens, and then we're the ones doing the fiduciary thing, and I've been sitting here for 5 years, and we don't have 1, 2, or 3 here. So I'm struggling with this. So for me, you know, the dollars are, you know, they are whatever they are. But I think that the work needs to be done in all of these 3, and they're by clear the biggest items here.
And I see we haven't got an OCP line in.
Well,
which also needs updating.
you know, and I think, you know, to this, this is my overwhelming piece on this one, just to go showing big pieces here. I mean, I look at where Pam's cash surplus is and where we currently are if we do some minor bun fighting here. You know, the numbers kind of mesh out. I'm thinking a 5-point increase, everybody gets a whole bunch of stuff. It's kind of looking like it's not quite as aggressive as it has been in other years, short of being draconian and just taking out a sharp knife and slashing everything. But I think for me, the current council's come so far in 2 years, I really believe this is the year to push a bunch of stuff through where
Strategic stuff.
there's not a whole big tax increase. The whole reasons are, council's a bright bunch of guys and gal, but you know, staff's packing a lot of heavy mail here, and I'd like to hand back to them some of these things.
Well, sentiment, yeah, absolutely. Don't forget, we are going to, I believe it's fair to say, we're in the way of getting some windfall revenues from municipal asset sales, whether land or, well, land, I suppose. Certainly that's in contemplation, it's in the OCP. You know, any cash surplus, it's a figment of imagination. That should be going back into reserves. You know, the reserves, from what I believe, the reserves are a little low. So I don't want to spend it simply because it's there. I'm happy to put it back in reserves. But I take your point that we've got some wiggle room. And there's time, it's time. Fred, you've been banging the table about this yourself. You want an emergency management plan.
And Fred, let me just go for one more piece here, and I'll hand it back to you. I think that, you know, the piece here is that if just, in any one of these 3 areas, if just something really weird happens and we're holding the bag, I'm not happy with that.
You're going to look bad.
And it's the wrong thing to do. It's not why the electorate did what they did on voting day. And I think as we, the most informed folks in the village, it's, you know, I think
That's
if
scary.
you went to the average villager and said, you know, it's just a horrible thing about the chief. It really is. I'm so sorry. And what are we going to do now when we don't have a plan? And you know that we can muck around with kind of a Band-Aid here, and we've done that before, and it wasn't a lot of comfortable conversation. I just don't want to go through that again.
And I think it's different from now. You know,
And
there's
I
new
think-
standards. There's no volunteers.
And if it's a push-off, I would hold my nose, allocate the dough, expense it, collect the tax for it, knowing that it's going to be a process in place for 2018.
Two things. Maybe I misunderstood, but I thought I read, God knows when, that if you sell land, you have to, you can't just spend it on staff or and whatever. You have to keep the money for land. Is that somewhere?
Depends on the kind of land, but that's a good, prudent
It's
way of looking.
restricted. It's not just, oh, we can go spend it
You're
on
not going to go
something.
wrong with that thinking.
Okay. And number two,
But you could use borrow against it, Eileen, that'd be the freebie there.
okay, but number two, totally different subject. I think we're going about this the wrong way. I think we're telling staff we need more staff or we need whatever, and I think we should wait until it comes from staff and then deal with it.
Well, yeah, I don't know that I agree with that. I think it's our role to be strategic, and Ron's completely right. If somebody came to me today and or the worst happened, we don't have a plan to take. We don't have an emergency plan. I mean, if there's a fire in the wrong place, those people are walking through the forest to get out of there.
I totally agree. We need the plans. I don't think we should be saying we need staff. I think staff should be telling us if we need staff.
That depends on the
suggesting
strategic
to us.
direction we're giving them. So I think we have given a strategic plan now, and so I'm willing to concede that maybe now's not the time for a planner. It's just a resource that addresses it. You're right. I'm thinking it's the plans. So the question is, do we want to allocate some money and spend it when we can, or do we want to push it off to next year?
Well, again, Fran, back to you on this one. I would hold the place here for yet another bun fight on this one. I think, you know, your point is correct. We're not going to jam opportunity down staff's throats when they don't want it. Although, no matter how many times we talk about the CAO working late, when I came out of volleyball and went out the window at 9:30, guess who's there waiting to be going to
I
my
got
He was
class?
day trading in Hong Kong.
Yeah, so there you go. So I think that for me, there's more on this one. So for me, I'd keep this still in the first cut.
Well, not because I suggested it, that I hold this in high priority. my thinking was like, I didn't, quite honestly, I didn't understand the planner, like what you were intending for. I get it, I can see it. The fire review, as we spoke to before, and Peter would like to hold off on that. Fair enough, I think it's necessary and it's gonna need to be done, but I would leave that to staff to tell us when to do it. The emergency coordinator, as Ron was mentioning, you know, we've been trying to do this for a long time and it always keeps getting shelved. And I have this great concern that if we have the highway blocked at both ends, staff can't get in here in the night, and we have an EOC necessary situation. We don't have enough residents that can fill in until staff can get here, and that really concerns me because even though we've got a competent fire department, BC Ambulance is real good people, Search and Rescue are very good people here, we're really well served, but to some degree the head's off the chicken unless we've got an EOC functioning. And we aren't where we need to be on that one. And I think we need somebody to pull it all together with skill sets that I don't think we have. My suggestion when we brought it to the emergency steering committee, was that last week or the week before, I think there was going to be a couple of questions asked for possible people that we could tap on the shoulder. We haven't met again, so I don't know how that's gone. So I think it might be doable, and to Ron's point, of the three of them, I wouldn't like to shelve all three of them. I think we've got to make some progress on one of them, and this one seems the most likely to me. Oh, and to the other point about you know, people on dead-end streets, that is my biggest concern about emergency here, of trapped people unable because they don't know where to go.
Okay.
I mean, desperate people will take desperate measures, and sometimes they'll be lucky, and sometimes they'll be the wrong way. And
Well, I don't know what an emergency management coordinator would do in that regard, but presumably they know. So this is a sort of a 1/3 time position.
well, whatever the deal is, my suggestion was to see if we could find an emergency coordinator from another community that we could get a day a week out of them, or some such thing like that. So they would be on our payroll and theirs at the same time. Don't know if it's doable, but that was just how I came up with the 20 grand number.
What do you say?
Yeah, I mean, Nye and I were gonna make some phone calls and see if, you know, what we can discover in terms of potential for somebody in the reasonable proximity who might be available, or get some names of people who would do this on a contract basis. So I haven't got there yet. I don't know if Nye has.
So what does this person
we
do?
Agree that, I mean, you know, we sat around the table at that committee meeting and discussed concerns about the status quo, and that it's not, it can't stay as it is. We have to take some.
It's a blank sheet of
steps.
paper right now, as far as I understand it. So does this person go around and buck up trees that look like fire hazards, or do they just make plans?
There'd be some plans required, like evacuation plans, different strategies for different types of risks. You have a completely different situation for an earthquake versus a forest fire. You know, earthquake, you're probably staying in place unless there's no power or water. But you know, they're different kinds of plans, and we need to drill down. We have an emergency plan, but it's very, you know, sort of generic and doesn't have a lot of specifics pertaining to Lions Bay. So it needs some updating in terms of specifics, and we need someone to be able to spend time drilling down on different areas where we see the highest risks. And Fred alluded to one of them, you know, situations where we can't get in, let alone get out. So
Well, the most likely one is running out of water. But yeah, so you know, it's essentially an insurance policy. Is that right? I mean,
There's bits and pieces in different parts. You know, Eileen is well versed on the ESS part. We've got fire, we've got an emergency plan, as Peter put it, that needs some work. Somebody needs to come in and look at Lions Bay, look at where we're at, and look at the specific issues that we have, and formulate a step plan. For
But
us
how's
to
that
move
different to
forward.
the plan that we spent? What did that last one cost us? 35.
Somewhere around
Yeah.
there,
12,000.
Oh, no wonder.
It was basically an
Chris
update, I
Leonard.
think, to the
Okay.
previous
Yeah.
plan, so.
So it will be just this person. This person is actually a plan writer.
Well, I think what I'm advocating is more than just somebody who's gonna write a plan and then run away. We need somebody who can set up a training program for residents and oversee the implementation. Somebody who's got their eye to the ground, or ear to the ground, whatever, can have the resources at their fingers to advise people, okay, we got courses coming up at such and other date, and start taking who's ever available, take names and start slotting people into places, and vet the people that go into the various positions and everything. There's more than just writing a plan.
Yeah, I think it's also building up the network of other agencies and contacts and people that we need to rely on a regular basis for the kinds of things that Fred just alluded to, as well as when the proverbial shit hits the fan.
Well, it's beyond my experience. So I'll be guided by my colleagues as to needing it. This is this will be committing to 20,000 a year,
Pretty much, if that's the number.
if that's the number.
Yeah. Yeah, it might need to be a higher number for all of us.
Can I just have another supplemental budget request? Thermostat.
Of course, we weren't even going to have prepared ones.
Didn't we tax for that already last year? And where is it? I see the plates there.
I
So,
believe it was something that was cut. A decision was made to, not by us,
Oh.
to,
We used to have a thermostat there when they did
I know.
renovations.
they took it away.
Can we have it back? Where's my pen? I'm gonna.
are you too warm?
It's more stuffy than warm.
You're wearing a jacket.
Take your coat off.
Yeah,
It's not warm.
Take your coat.
I'm not
Stay a
disagreeing.
while.
I'm not disagreeing with you, but you might want to
Do I?
take
I was actually wondering about that. All right, I'll take my coat off. I did take. Here's my coat card.
So would that be a thermostat for council chambers?
Okay, it's not council. I mean, it is council. Ow. Ah, that hurt. That got cut. All $400 of it.
Should we look into it? It was really
It was never
expensive.
actually in the budget because we were gonna get a quote for it. You'd have to do a whole rewiring thing. It's not as simple as just sticking a thermostat on the wall, unfortunately.
But we can.
But it has to be wired in. Oh.
We can still get a quote. I'm all about the quotes this year.
Okay,
Real
fine.
numbers.
Okay. House on Community Forum
It's already
support
in
is.
budget. Yeah, when
fine,
I
okay.
saw that Metro had bailed on the 50%,
I know. I'm
put it
still
in the
working on that.
council
Not
budget.
only am I working on it, I'm looking for them to double it. Haven't given up.
So,
back to that, why does it have to be wired? We've got wireless ones in our house. Is it?
Oh, that's actually a good point.
Sorry?
It's because there's just one zone for the entire office. You would need this to be a separate zone if you wanted to
Okay,
justify the
okay,
heat here.
that's
Yeah.
why.
Well, yeah, I
We have
understand that.
zones?
I'm quite happy cooling the rest of the office
Well, they're
Sure
not
you
going
are.
for the hour that I'm hot. Should be a
Right,
zone.
there. Okay. So these are staff requests, and like I say, we'll put them all together for the next one. And this is where staff had some of a similar requests to council. They're on this sheet. So detailed bridge inspections, I will pass that over to Nye.
So this is further to the AECom Infrastructure Master Plan, where we did not have the budget within the plan to hang people off the side of the bridge, to look at the other sides of the bridges, to look at the decks and the structural steel. So what we are proposing is a $5,000 per bridge inspection that includes using trained personnel under the bridges with ropes to inspect the concrete, the steel, the under deck of the bridge.
Just a contractor.
This would be a contractor that would come in and do this, yes. And prepare a methodology for repair for all of the structural repairs.
What does destructive, non-destructive mean?
Destructive testing would be a core
Okay.
taken of the bridge to look at the internal steel to determine if it's if there's corrosion happening. They do have methods now that I'm not familiar with where they don't need to do a destructive test.
Oh.
So if we can get that done, great. The other thing this will provide is when a bridge is first installed, it has a certain load rating. As it deteriorates, that load rating drops. This will provide us an up-to-date load rating of our bridges right now based upon their current condition.
And how the number arose, it's 8 bridges at 5,000 each, 40,000, but we're suggesting the rebudget of 14.3 be applied to that.
Where does that 14.3 come from?
It was the bridge work that had been in the budget, but some of the work was done by staff, and then some of the work was based on a preliminary AECOM report, I
So
believe, and we didn't.
The AECOM report identified structural or visible cracks and other features that needed to be repaired. And the budget in the IMP was 14,300. Staff were able to affect a lot of the repairs out of regular operating dollars. Once we were made aware of what the issues were, they just went out and repaired them.
That was sort of trip hazard type stuff and concrete.
Absolutely,
Yeah, yeah.
So vegetation
This is a little more
management.
structural.
This is more structural, so the balance of the funds was intended to do those structural repairs. However, when we had the people come out to quote on those repairs, the questions were made, well, you know, if we repair this crack under here, what if there's another crack on the other side? You're better off doing a proper inspection
Absolutely.
first. Yeah,
And we can get it done for 5,000 a bridge.
correct, yeah.
It's a no-brainer, right? It's so overdue as to be scary, according to the IMP. This was one of the must-be-done yesterday
Yeah.
IMP numbers, right?
BC does not have any mandatory inspection requirements on bridges.
Yeah, well, that's neither here nor there.
Ottawa does. Ottawa has an act, a provincial act, that requires bridges to be inspected by a professional engineer every 5 years. So that's a full, complete underside inspection.
We call that downloading in municipal business.
But this is doing over several years too.
No,
Yeah.
just if we have enough money, we would like to do it this year. I just
Okay.
sort of had flagged it in terms of that whole scope of, we
Yeah.
can push things out to 2018.
Yeah,
to
so at
21.
5,000 a bridge, you could do 4 this year, 4 next year, or you could do them all this year.
And we could do them all this year.
Yes.
It goes without saying that this budget must be spent this year. No carryovers.
I would say the advantage of doing them all this year is from that is then going to be a plan of what we have to do to fix them, so.
That's where I'm thinking, in terms, so we know where we stand. And that would all have to be-
Having them done this year?
Yeah, can you write the RFP?
Come
Well,
on, you have weekends, don't you?
Yeah.
Staff
yeah,
hammer.
in some cases, it's going to be full replacement, and then you're talking millions.
Yeah. No, we absolutely we need to get on top of this now.
Yeah.
Because there is maintenance work that we can do to prolong the lives
Yeah,
of these
yeah,
bridges.
yeah.
So
And actually, maybe an overriding point I should make, all joking aside, staff will take this away and then determine our timeline of what the best time to do it, and it will be linked into the core services review that I is working on as well. So
Does that mean that we don't do anything until April, or what does that mean?
in terms of moving forward,
Yeah.
no, similar to the water model, we're moving forward on a bunch of items.
On what authority? Do you need sort of a pre-approval, pre-budget authority? Because I'm conscious, it seems to me that we lose January, February, March, and most of April because you're waiting for the budget to pass.
No, RFPs need to be written, there's preliminary investigative works that need to be done, so there's a lot of stuff going on ahead of time, yeah.
And I mean,
And
you
we
get
have-
an idea of the commitment of council to these requests.
Yeah.
Sort of,
And there's the
Now.
2017 budget year of the 5-year plan. We have the authority to.
but
you
not
know,
for some of
consider-
these.
Well, we have
Enough.
money, consulting money, and yes,
Enough to go on.
start that preliminary work.
Okay.
And just by its nature, a lot of capital work, even in places that adopt budgets the 1st of January,
Mhm.
it starts in the spring, summer.
Yeah.
It's that preparatory work that's done in the first few months.
Okay.
So we'll keep that in, and then maybe staff will come back with a recommendation of how many we think is feasible to do this year. But we wanted to give council kind of the whole number, and that the big thing is the approval to rebudget the 14.3 for a slightly different purpose. And the next one, Lions Bay Beach Park, again, I'll let Nye speak to this, but we've sort of amalgamated everything, and I know it's been on kind of the budget every year. So the plan this year was to be really clear about what we wanted to do and the exact cost for it, and then getting it done. So I'll let Nye
So-
speak to this.
Can I just ask what the original ask was for 2016?
Well, under council, I think it was a typo. You had $100 in for Lions Bay Beach Park.
That's because it had been approved the year before.
And
bu-
what-
So it
budgeted
was just,
and-
it was a
and-
placeholder for the rebudget?
Yeah.
What
Okay.
was the value of the budget?
20,000, right, Ron? Or was
It
it
was
16 or 18?
13,000.
13.
13.
I've
And we've
laughed,
actually
I've cried,
spent,
it's become a part of me.
Yeah, exactly.
it's,
So
Ron just shakes his head every time this comes up.
we looked at the 13. We tried to look at replacing the stairs, the retaining wall, doing some fence work, and we were running short of cash on all of it. We did purchase wood for the fence replacement. Staff will do that internally as part of operating this summer. We have some significant or serious concerns about the retaining walls that are supporting both the play structures and the upper stairs. So we've had a contractor come in and provide an estimate for redoing those retaining walls and the stairs in concrete with built-in uplighting, and that's what the estimate here is for. So that would provide a brand new retaining structure that wraps around the whole top tier of the park and has a built-in staircase included in.
How does that mesh in with the retaining wall above the septic field, the stacked rock?
The stack rock would not be touched.
So this maintains the contiguous line from the marina to the boat rental side is really more
So
or
the
less
the stacked rock in front of the septic field and the washroom
Yeah.
area would stay the same.
keeps going on.
Just beyond that, you have there's a wooden landscape tie
Yeah.
retaining structure. So that would be the replacement of that, the stairs, and then further
The other side where the playscape
the swings
is,
and the playscapes are. That wood retaining wall is also rotten.
So that
and-
goes, and then the stairs are concrete.
Absolutely. You'd have a retaining wall all around, and then stairs.
So it's a once in a lifetime fix.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
But how is our concrete, the retaining wall, no problem. The concrete stairs with kids running around with bare feet, swimsuits, I just would worry about them sliding, tripping, and hitting concrete
Yeah,
stairs.
I'm concrete is it's a critical component in parks because it will last forever, and you're not worried about failure or collapse.
But they're
Concrete is used all over the place. For example, when when West Van built Ambleside Beach Playscape, the concrete skateboard ramps, concrete stairs. There are concrete structures at the ferry building at the foot of 14th in West Van. So concrete is used in parks.
Even when kids are wet and running
But
around,
the pool
is
complex in West Van is concrete.
Yeah.
Are you talking about slip hazard or hitting head hazard?
hitting heads, running,
Well, I mean,
hitting
this,
head heads.
hitting your head on a railroad tie
Stairs.
versus on a brick versus a piece of concrete, not going to be the slipperiness. But I mean, they take care of that.
Yeah, we'll be.
My concern is that this is piecemeal. I don't see this as complete because there's still the retaining wall on the beach itself, which is now leaning. You know,
Yes.
the let's call it grouted rock to be generous.
Yeah.
Not to mention the stairs down to the beach, which are undercut. I mean, this is something that I mentioned, Pam, and it's probably a good point to sort of bring it up again. Is that these kinds of projects? I think I would like to see a formal framework so we know what it is that we're being asked and agreeing to.
Yeah.
This is again, this is too piecemeal. It's too small. The beach needs a full redo. Now, if we can do this and not, spend money that's essentially going to have to be respent next year when we do it properly. This is a standalone retaining wall.
This will save you the upper section, which is going to collapse because the retaining walls are rotten.
And what about that antiquated play structure, the lower one?
So staff discussed that, and we felt that we needed a piece. We needed to go out to the community and canvass what type of play structure, what age groups, what would the community like to see within that park. And then take our cues from that community piece.
Okay, that's good. I can tell you, as the representative, that nobody uses it. It's painful, it hurts, the bolts stick out, the kids don't like it.
Correct.
We may be able to recover that and make it sunny. I don't think so because of the trees above. But without that, there are no swings at the beach. It's the climbing structure and the little kids one, the tunnel and the plastic thing, which is also reaching the end of its useful life. But
Sorry, the kids structure where there's the spring toy, the little fire engine.
yeah,
spring
that's the
toy,
little kids.
That's the structure that's in worse shape, the worst
Yeah.
shape of all.
Yeah. Then the swings, nobody uses them. It's dark and cold and dirty.
Mm-hmm. So in terms of relocating them, in terms of what age group you want that taught play structure to be, in terms of what you want it to look like, is it going to be an adventure type plastic, colorful, or is it going to be more natural? Big toy, you know, wooden structure. Those are all things that we would go out to the community with some sort of survey or community piece asking for input, and then plan our budget and park upgrades from there.
Well, I don't need to tell you that those plastic structures are incredibly expensive. The one at the school was 65 grand, and that's not huge.
So what the hope was, in a way this was a placeholder. I think why we struggled with the beach is we all wanted to do things with the beach, but we weren't specific enough. The money we put in wasn't enough. That's what NI found with this 13,000. So they did what they could with it. So the only point of this is we've gone out and got hard quotes on this. This is what we can do for that much money. That's not to say that's all we can do if council wants us to do more. But we are thinking beyond 2017 as well. The idea was, as Nye said, figure out what we want for the play structures and put it into the 2018 portion of the 5-year plan so that it could be implemented in time for the following summer. So I think we're on the same page in sort of a longer term thing for the beach, but to me the key is specifically identifying what it is we're doing. Think beyond 1 year and then budget an accurate amount of money so we can actually do it. And as further to your point, if it's in the 2018 budget, we could get it done in the early spring of next year. So it is ready for the summer.
Well, that's the other thing. This must be done before May or June at the latest. Otherwise. So what about the gateway, that gate structure?
So also inclusive in this is the carryover of the electrical work. So we had an electrical contractor come in there to look at the baseboard heaters and the hand dryers. And there are problems with the electrical system within that building. Of note, the 2 spotlights at the top of the building are not to code and they're a fire hazard. So what is included in this is the replacement of those 2 lights, installing hand dryers and doing some upgrades to the electrical system to further support the community events that happen there, such as Fire Day or Firefighters Day, etc. So there's that portion in there as well.
Mm-hmm.
And the
in the previous public work, these numbers, none of them came from council. I also just wanted to, these all came out of the staff request for fencing, and it was slated that gateway, the log gateway, had to come down.
Yeah, my understanding is that the budget request was in there by staff, but that it was cut back, and I don't know how much was taken off.
Yeah,
I don't know what the original was. Yes, the building inspector took a look at that, and we do need to get to it. We just haven't had time.
So that's a much loved structure, colleagues.
As well, I would like to throw in that there are 2 posts within the gazebo that have rotted away. So staff will be replacing 2 of those posts this summer.
This was before my time. Was the gazebo not always intended to be temporary? Does anybody remember? No? I certainly heard that story, you know, where the barbecue is. The retaining wall, if you call it that, the stacked brick inside there is all collapsing. Is that slated for this?
No, that could be a piece that we go to the community on, how much is, or how important is the gazebo structure.
Yeah, it's well used by whoever gets there first, and then they book it.
It's built by volunteers.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was in commemoration of something. And so now, just for our own edification, the main project is the steps down to the sand and the wall. What sort of...
No, the main project is the wall holding up both play structures.
No, I'm talking about for future.
Oh, yes.
So that's a small project compared to the big project, which is the beach retaining wall.
Yes.
You care to make an estimate of what that sort of price would be?
No. Fisheries, DFO concerns, yeah, no.
So you need a year lead time anyhow before we even broke ground on anything?
Not really. There is a fast track process through DFO if we have a consultant on board, and there are several consultants. So Tori is the one West Van uses quite often.
The reason I ask is that I mean there's rumblings. I've certainly been approached by half a dozen people saying it's too high. It's more than 4 feet high,
Mm-hmm.
so you know it's dangerous. should be engineered, etc.,
So-
etc.
When we look at these types of things, what should it be constructed out of? Rock? Concrete?
Concrete, as
Lock
far as I
block?
can.
You know, what kind of budget are we talking about? What would the community want? How much of an uproar if we replaced it with,
Lock block,
yeah.
there'd be an uproar.
So I think the community piece is important. Let's find out what they want this summer, and then we'll go from there. We'll take that and put it into the budget for 2018.
Sound right? Why are you laughing?
Who's running for election on that one?
The new improved lock block beach wall. Yeah.
Hey,
Not me, thanks. I just
Lock
don't
block
want
can
to
look
feel.
beautiful if you look at it
I
in the
just don't
dark.
want to feel the complaints.
work with me.
Yeah, I'm more concerned about the safety aspects of it.
I mean, this is just a huge number. Okay, so I've kept lots of notes. I hate that beach, God. Okay,
Proceed.
so for $40,000, you're gonna do what you can do, and then we're gonna plan for the following year.
For 23.
Yeah, 23 plus
Yeah. it go-
12
That includes the
Up to
12, not
Yeah.
not in plus the 12.
plus.
Yeah, the hit this year will be 23, but we're spending 23
However,
plus 12.
there's a proviso that has to be done by before
I
the
hear you
summer.
loud and clear.
Otherwise,
Your
there's no
worship.
point.
Okay,
Understood.
Meaning you may need pre-approval or something. Draw from reserves.
let's hear the fight on the compressor.
The
Or the
emergency generator, that ties in nicely to our emergency planning. I mean, won't be much of a plan if we don't have any power at the village office. But we put that in 30,000. We are going to get a quote to firm that up. But staff
does
are
it run
strongly. It would run
Propane.
us, the office.
Propane?
Oh, I thought you said, what does it run?
Oh, no.
What does it run on? Okay.
On.
Yeah, it could be propane or diesel.
You've now triple checked. I think that the existing compressor, which is the size of this room more or less,
Yes. correct.
doesn't have the nameplate capacity.
No, it does not. We had an electrical company come out and take a look at
That was the first time, and he said he needed to go and check the specs.
No, he came back, took
He
a
did,
look.
okay.
Yeah, it's not. There's not enough. There may be enough for one circuit. Period.
So what is the capacity of that generator?
Oh.
You know I'm going to ask at $30,000.
Well, we
of
have to get
this
a quote
one
on
or
this.
the one that's
No, the one
existing?
there.
I will get that to you.
Yeah.
Okay.
What is the
So-
nameplate capacity in kilowatts?
This 30,000, like I say, we'll come back at the next meeting with a better quote. We wanted it in as a placeholder, but we're
So the
strongly
EOC
recommending-
is on generator.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yes.
This would only be for the office.
Office.
We could run the TV screen. That would be nice.
And the
And
emergency
This is,
center.
it's the emergency center. That's the big one, is that's where people go in an emergency and we
Ah.
would have no power. The office, I mean, it's an advantage if the office also runs, because we'll be here.
I didn't
but,
think about that. Yeah,
it's
no,
the,
that puts a
it's the
different.
gym
Yeah.
and the, yeah,
By the way, speaking about heat in the gym, for
which we
when
weren't.
well, it's an emergency, right? What is this? Please don't use the fire because it's smoky. Yeah, can it be made non-smoky?
We're looking into the whole thing with the fire. We'll be talking to our insurance about that. It's a liability concern, so we're going to we're looking at that as we renew our insurance.
So what is the heat in there? It's the heat
Oh,
pump.
it's
Oil, isn't it?
oil.
Oh, it's oil. Yeah, it is oil.
Oil and heat pump.
Oil and
So
heat.
that would work in if that became the emergency reception
Yeah.
center. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, yeah, we wouldn't be doing it by the fireplace. Air compressor for Works Yard Shop, 2,000.
Yeah.
And-
So. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, sorry, did you want to go into details of all these, or just, okay?
No, only the big ones.
Okay, well, the next bit, backhoe, the 27,000, based on a recent quote that I got, might be a bit light. We assumed we would lease it.
So that's 27 a year.
That's,
year?
yeah, for 5 years. We could, our backhoe, well, let me speak to that, is on its last legs.
Yeah, both the Bobcat and the excavator are on their last legs.
This would be double up.
Sorry.
We wouldn't need an excavator separately. We'd just use the backhoe.
Correct. So either we replace the two, the backhoe or the Bobcat and the excavator, or we get a new Bobcat or a new backhoe.
Yeah. And is this full size cat type or is it a Kubota mid-size type that you're
No, it's a
looking
full-size backhoe. Yeah, that would allow us to do the main brakes and that without
Yeah.
hiring a contractor.
Oh, as opposed to the Bobcat backhoe that you've got now.
The little attachment on the back of the Bobcat.
No, you've got a tracked
Excavator.
excavator.
Yeah.
That one's a Bobcat brand.
Yes. The mini excavator. Yes.
So you're thinking of going to a bigger excavator then?
No, a four-wheel rubber tire backhoe.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The excavator is on its last legs. We just had a repair done to it. Some of the hydraulics hoses went, and the repair person that came in sort of laughed at us. So
I know a
see some
museum-
Band-Aids holding the tracks on.
Yeah.
So you think this is light and it's going to be a higher amount?
Yes, we'll have to fine tune that number. I based it on $100,000, a 5-year lease, and we're thinking 100 might be light. There's other options, like looking at second-hand ones, then we might not be able to lease those if they were second-hand. So we have a few options, but again, it was that initial identifying that actually had this in the budget 2 years ago and it got cut. I mean, it's been on the radar for a while, but it's
No, it
getting
has.
to the point where it's...
Well, the only reason it was being cut then was because we're looking to buy one. Leasing is the no-brainer. So what does a Bobcat cost? 200?
A Bobcat or
I mean, a backhoe.
West vans are 190. They're 4-wheel drive, all-terrain. I don't know that we would need to go with something that skookum. So,
Well, again, this is something that I would like to see this framework to understand. What are we doing with it, and what? So, for example, maybe we do want a 4-wheel drive backhoe to go into the forest to do what the fire services people said we need to do, is go in there every now and again and start bucking up logs to get us in there so we can manhandle logs with the log grabbing attachment. Because we have a fire hazard in pointing to fire hazard area that maybe if we had the right equipment to get in there, we could do something with.
I think you'd be better off with creating wilderness trees and bucking up the branches or
That's what they say.
Yeah.
They say essentially, well, they said, this is, when I say they, I mean Wildfire came in here. They said, put the branches into clearings and burn them. I said, this it'll happen in another council's term. But, no, completely forgot what I was going to say. So that's what a backhoe costs, and we have to have one.
And staff could come back at the next meeting with more information. The idea is for these larger ticket items, if they're not rejected outright, we would come back with additional information like we would with the beach park and the
That's
backhoe.
a lot of
We
contracting
would look
time.
at,
For 27, you can get quite a lot of contractor Bobcat hours.
Yeah, so if you hire a Bobcat with operator, you're looking at about $100 an hour.
Yeah,
Right?
that's about right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So that's on regular time, not overtime.
yeah, there's 270 hours right there. And you don't have any of the maintenance issues. Although I presume the lease would take care of maintenance.
Yeah.
Or I've had neighbors, they seem to rent them, they get delivered without an operator. They use them and then they
Correct.
come pick them up.
Yeah, I mean, we're using the Bobcat and the excavator on a regular basis, not
so that's
just
no good, okay.
yeah, not just for emergency repairs. We use it for loading up material in vehicles in and around the works yard all the time. They're heavily used.
Makes sense.
So, renting, sure, we could hire a machine and do it. We lose the
Spontaneity.
not just that, but the ability to plan our work.
Yeah.
There are only so many backhoes in the Lower Mainland for rent.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose this is, again, I'd like to, perhaps this is the budget year for it. So in terms of the capital equipment that we have done in the works yard, I've asked for this list and utilization figures. Maybe I'll have to hold off on that one. But I know we have a cherry picker. I know we have a chipper. I've seen one or two other things. Did they get used, and will this get used? If you tell me, Nye, it will get used for the first time ever, I'll believe it. But I also heard that for all the other vital equipment that we had to buy, lawnmower, that's the John Deere,
Yeah.
the chipper, which we had to have, the cherry picker, which we had to have.
Yeah, I believe we have hour meters on most of our equipment, so I can get you some numbers on usage hours.
Hallelujah. Spelled with an H. I was told we didn't have hour meters, or the process would be too difficult to implement. But it's not from mine. Surely the Public Works Department knows what the utilization of our equipment is, because they need to know when they're changing oil and stuff.
Yeah, the Bobcat is heavily used, as is the mini excavator.
Yeah, so what do we think?
Well, quite frankly, I was astounded that they let their old Bobcat go 10 years ago. They had a nice John Deere, and it was a beautiful piece of machinery.
Backhoe, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you just can't do the same thing with a Bobcat and a little
No.
amateur excavator that a good heavy-duty backhoe can do. The other thing I like about them having it as opposed to renting it as needed is, again, not to be a fanatic about emergency stuff, but when stuff goes really bad, it's best to have it here. You don't wanna have to be waiting for somebody to deliver it on a road that may or may not be open.
This would be road licensed, right?
Yes.
So you just drive it on the road.
Yes.
You don't have to trailer in. So, what are we thinking?
Well, we can bring more accurate costs back to
Yes.
the next
Yeah, but I
additional
think take that as a
information.
yes.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
to pursue, okay. Broughton Hall floor repair, this is
That
just,
was
there's some,
Christmas for 3 years.
Wow.
there are some gaps in the floor, so it just needs to be repaired.
Yeah.
Is this not just a maintenance item?
It is, we probably could have absorbed it in the current budget, I just,
It's good to know.
you're right, it probably isn't a typical supplemental request.
Hey, we've got a jumping jack. I've seen it. I've used it
Where?
on the baseball mound. A very nice one too.
A plate compactor.
Mhm.
A mini plate
A
compactor.
very good one.
Yeah. So basically, the
It's on its last legs.
no, the PSI on that is not adequate enough for road compaction.
Okay.
So when you compact roads, you need a 95 Proctor on the roads. So that's your density and how tight you can pack.
No, this is only good for playground baseball mounds.
Yeah. So in order to compact anything greater than a foot, we need a proper compactor.
Is it one of those about yay wide and about a meter and a half long?
There's a couple of types. You can get a jumping jack, which is what the staff recommend. The plate is 6 inch by 6 inch. It's
Alright.
able to go into a trench and compact on either side of pipe. So when we do a repair, the road's not going to sag after the fact. It's compacted and it's properly installed.
Sounds cheap to me. 2,500.
I can definitely bump it up.
Stairs below sewer treatment plant, Kelvin Grove Beach Park, 15,000. They're deteriorating.
So as you go past the treatment plant, on your right hand side, the first path takes you by the new property to that little spit. If you go further, there's another set of stairs that comes down that leads to that first cove at Kelvin Grove Park. So this is a replacement of those stairs with a lock, not a lock block, but an Allen block or a similar structural type.
What are they made of now? Landscape timbers.
Landscape timbers that are rotten. Yeah.
Can we not do something like railroad ties? It's not used that much.
Railroad ties are creosoted timbers, and environmentally no, especially that close to the foreshore. The other option is to try and do something with rock, but again, we'd need an excavator or some sort of heavy machinery to go in there and do it. This is strictly a contract cost to have somebody come in and do the work.
I mean, this is 15,000 being spent at Kelvin Grove when we're desperate for 5,000 to spend at Main Beach. And Kelvin Grove is not used except for a few people walking their dogs.
It's not
The
a few
other-
people, it's quite a few.
Well,
The
yeah, it's
other-
more than a few. That's true.
The other option is to close those trails.
That was going to
Close
be
that pathway.
just dig them up and let it go rough. But then
Yeah,
you have
'cause
erosion issues and
You can access from the other side, from the end of the main path.
At low tide.
I'm not sure, yeah.
I think so.
I would be fine with doing the stairs at KG, even though it pains me to take 15 grand from Main Beach, but at least to be a beachhead, I'm doing one beach. It only took Fred and I 3 years to get the washrooms done at Kelvin Grove last time, so during my time as a two-term counselor, I can actually say I got the washrooms and the stairs at Kelvin Grove.
As
I gave the beach sewage.
an aside, what about those stairs that came down from the trail to, it's like a trail,
Up top,
Correct,
The-
yeah.
On the on-ramp?
No, I believe
up higher.
steep
Councillor
stairs that
Wilkie's
come
talking
down.
about the stairs between
Oh, between the houses?
the neighborhoods.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
Yes.
just a no, volunteers did that day one, so it's been a volunteer thing, and
It's closed now.
it's closed.
It's been closed for years.
8 years probably.
Yeah.
It will come forward as a discussion item as part of the core service review.
Okay,
Okay.
Well,
obviously not being fixed in the next
15
year,
grand,
but
15 grand to look like.
Oh, yeah, we did actually have that in the budget quite a few
We
years
did
ago,
once,
like,
yes.
Yeah, and I think we had 75,000
Which one?
taken out.
Over the,
stairs
between the
and-
houses.
Yeah, Sweetwater Tower.
Because you'd be doing it the same way, you'd be doing it as a one and done, that'd be 75 Gs.
I don't know if that quote was accurate, that was just what we happened, that was a long time.
Yeah,
Well, those
I
were
remember.
in our wealthier days. I mean, 15,000 for some stairs. Do we have any? Can we do this as part of the consultation? Do expand the consultation to sort of a beach parks consultation?
I think it's entirely council.
But you have to come up with your
telling us
number
what to
here
do.
anyhow, so, yeah, you're putting a number down. You've already researched the number?
That's a contracted number, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the question is, how many people use it? Because I have a good sense, I don't ever go to Kelvin Grove, quite frankly, but I certainly go to the main beach park all the time to drop the kids and to pick up the kids. And I know how used it is there.
Well, I mean, the alternatives, I mean, I don't go to either beach an awful lot, but as for this one, the last time I did, I mean, somebody's gonna break their leg going down the dead stairs in KG, so that's a case closed to me. Either you close the whole beach down and say, crawl through the brambles,
Right.
or fix
No, this is not the main
And
access.
this-
This is only to the two little side coves.
Correct.
The main access is still ongoing.
Yes.
But people
But
do
it's,
use it.
it's the sandy part, the other one's all rocks. So it actually is a nice little, I won't go down it because it's too dangerous, but if it becomes not dangerous, I would use it.
Yeah, the other option is for council to direct staff to rebuild it with timber and whatever, which would be a temporary fix rather than a more permanent.
With the new backhoe.
With the new backhoe, yes.
You can have the stairs or the backhoe. You decide.
There's no decision required.
Why don't we hold this one for the ultimate?
Yeah, this is not a slam dunk to me.
Well,
frankly.
and again, we don't have to make set decisions. We were looking for things that could be knocked off right away, so we'll keep this on for further discussion, if that's okay. Emergency lighting at Works Yard.
That's
So,
a
given our
no-brainer.
plans for the works yard, I suppose that's
Oh.
a small number.
Yeah, this was a requirement. We came up in our health and safety inspections
Yeah,
that
it's a
there
no-brainer.
was- we were missing some emergency lighting. Okay. The heat pump for ambulance station in Clap Building. This is really just for council's information, but we're actually purchasing it as we speak. It broke, like they have no heat in the ambulance station, and it's a requirement of our lease. So this was really more for information. The SCADA. We have 18,500 that we're rebudgeting. But I know you had referenced the 5,000 on your plan.
I wanted
but
to
that was
up it a
just,
bit.
yeah, and that's why basically this is a starting point. We have 18.5. So for this.
But this is again one where I want to see the framework, because
Yes.
the project that I have in mind is called Telecom's Plan, not SCADA. So maybe we're talking about different things.
My suggestion here, just given the time, we've got it on here, and I think this is something that we need to determine what it is. Staff feels we need, council wants, and what it's going to cost. And we can discuss some of it initially now. What do you think? Just
I'm up to you. Right now, basically the way I'm looking at this and looking at the original ask by staff and the original budget request was a study to determine whether or not cellular or radio would be the best option. I believe that this could be a win-win in that if a cell tower is an option that council wishes to pursue, we would require some space at the top of that tower for either a radio or a cellular component to communicate.
For our private network SCADA.
For our SCADA,
Yeah.
yes. But I'd hesitate to select cellular at this point. Cellular data is contingent upon packet size and amount of data transferred. So I would like to have somebody come in and actually do a
But I think that's what we thought we were approving last time, was somebody to come in and do the plan and tell us what we need to do. And so you've seen many residents are some kind of aficionados, I wouldn't call them experts necessarily. We've had an offer from SC Communications to give us a turnkey cell tower. Where it would be situated, I don't know. We're talking about cellular communications for the parking plan. You know, the parking meters all run on cellular modems only. That's the only option. Residents are complaining about terrible cell service.
Yes.
So this is a larger plan. So, you know, the SCADA comes along for the ride, quite frankly. SCADA, in case you don't know, that's supervisory control and data acquisition. It's just a fancy word for remote control. Our remote control system comes along for the ride. So, is this 18.5 the plan that Council approved last year? Plan, not study.
The communications plan is not what the budget request was for. So if that's what's required now, we can look at that. The budget ask was for determining the feasibility to determine and recommend cellular or radio, including engineering costs, common requirements for the SCADA system.
What is the difference between cellular and radio?
Radio, you got me. Radio is UHF.
So like microwave communications, line of sight stuff.
Yeah.
Again, so we're all guessing here.
Mm-hmm.
We need somebody to tell us what to do.
Correct.
And we were prepared to pay 18.5 to find out.
Correct.
And then comes the SCADA part. The control valves, the...
The 18.5 budget request is for design build a radio or cellular communication backbone for SCADA.
Okay,
That's
so
the
it's two different
terminology.
projects.
Correct.
I would think that the vendor of that project that you just mentioned now would do the study for free.
The vendor, the cell tower supplier.
Yeah, so you're going to go out for it's a RFP, right? So you're going to say, please provide us something that does that, remotely connects our network together. Please propose microwave, UHF, or cellular, or hardwire, and then you're going to evaluate the proposal. And so in order to do that, they're going to have to come up with a plan.
The cellular provider is not going to be able to provide the information.
Not
on
the cellular
SCADA.
provider, the turnkey SCADA provider.
They wouldn't provide the cell tower.
No.
No, so if they say cellular, and you like the cellular proposition the best, but they say it's only going to work if you have a cell tower, well then that's something we'll have to do separately.
The SCADA communications study is basically what it entails is looking at each site specific. So each of the PRVs, each of the water tanks, each of the intakes, and developing a communications plan with the server or with the main computer or control computer at the workshop. It talks about it looks at the RTUs and the PLCs that are involved in the SCADA system, the analog and digital equipment at the plant, and the type of data that needs to be transmitted, and at what frequency and what speed. So it's different than a community-wide communications plan.
It's a separate project. So the
Correct.
project that Nikki asked for this time last year is completely different for this one. So you're talking about a sort of fairly major upgrade, and this is the first step to it for putting
No,
controllers...
I'm talking about doing what Nikki suggested, a SCADA communication study to look at the SCADA backbone and how
No,
to
what you
serve
just
it.
said there was implementing it. Putting it in. Putting a network in.
The full description for what Nikki had put in was design build radio cellular communication backbone for SCADA to replace the failing antiquated wire modem system. This does not include the radio or cellular equipment or line of sight or site specific equipment. So this is just for the study to do that SCADA communication piece.
Fine. Is that what you're still talking about?
I think
Yes.
the word build, it says design build.
Yeah.
Usually that means to build something, so maybe the word build should be removed from that description.
Yeah, this is just the paperwork that she had submitted
Yeah, yeah.
at that point.
So I know,
Yeah.
but just to, if we're going with that description, we should perhaps amend the description.
No,
to
it's
take
not
out
the
word
description
build.
that we're going with.
Okay.
This
And
is-
that also says radio cellular, because cellular, in the business they call it radio. The radio in my cell phone stopped working. Cellular is just radio. It just uses a different packet radio system.
different frequencies, different baud rates.
Well, board. Like 9600 US robotics modems. No, we're talking about digital now.
Yeah,
So that's fine, as long as we scope that out properly. And that is then the telecoms plan, and I don't like the word study, plan. That is the telecoms plan I'm talking about.
Are you talking about SCADA or are you talking about communication wide, like providing?
The driver is SCADA,
Okay,
but there's ancillary benefits that must be met.
correct. Okay.
But if the plan says forget cellular, it's not going to work in Lions Bay because we have too many trees, well then that's the answer. And then we're going to have to do something else about a cell tower and improving Cellcom for
No,
our...
I think we can incorporate that into this. If it is radio, having a cell provider come in
Might be
and
part of the
put up
deal.
a tower, but providing us with real estate at the top of that tower for our radio antennas would be just fine. So there is an opportunity.
It may
to
be a win-win,
piggyback.
as you said.
Yeah.
Just by the by, where would such a tower go?
They would have to cite that, and that depends on what we want to look at, what we want to communicate with. It may involve a repeater or store and forward site where data is transmitted and then stored for a few minutes and then transmitted.
Because the nearest cell towers are Anvil Island and Bowen, and I guess Gibson's.
Yeah. Yeah. So most radio systems rely upon building the infrastructure, which...
I mean, just so that you know, folks, I mean, as I understand, this is a revenue opportunity. You get paid a royalty and a lease fee by the tower operator.
Yeah. So the tower operator would come in, would build the tower on Lions Bay property, would rent out space on that tower, and
That's part of their business.
premium rates for the higher up the tower you get.
These things are not beautiful. And there will be resistance saying that I feel like my brain's being microwaved. So it's, you know, it's not a slam dunk.
And I'm not sure what the income would be in a small place like this. When they put the towers on high-rise buildings downtown, they make lots of money.
But it's not for the residents, it's for people driving by.
Oh, out in the water as well.
And on the water. Yeah, it's got nothing to do with lines, you know, there's probably 500 sellers, subscribers. in
But there's
Lions.
one on Bowen and Anvil, so
Don't
they
work.
don't need it.
Yes, they do. It doesn't work.
Okay.
But when you're driving on the highway, cell
You're-
service works fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, except when you come around the cut, but that's not our, that's, I don't, hey, I think we need a telecoms plan.
So we will rejig that and come
Yeah.
back to the next meeting with,
So am I making sense when I say I would like a sheet that gives the name of the project, the scope, what is in and what isn't in, success criteria, so we know whether we actually did or not? Can we do that for some of these big boys?
yes, that was sort of the objective with some of these larger ones, including the backhoe, to give some of the information you've asked for. This is a preliminary look. If there were things that council, we just didn't want to do the work ahead of council giving us kind of pre-approval.
I hear.
But I do want to.
The other alternative is to get down on your knees like you did for the backhoe, and look, it worked.
So Pam, you'll do a one-pager with
Yes.
each of the big items,
Yeah,
the small ones?
the bigger
right?
ticket for the next
Okay.
meeting.
And just sorry to interrupt. The driver here is so we don't have this conversation every year.
Yes.
What was said last year is not quite the
Yeah.
same as what we're getting this year.
Correct.
It's
Understood.
defined,
Yeah.
and that's what's being approved, and that is what must be delivered. That's not to say that it can't get changed, but it must be formally changed.
And that was one of the things I think we highlighted to improve in the budget process this year was, I think Fred had said that we'd have these ideas and we were just slashing, and then we didn't always appropriately slash the description,
Yeah.
and then there was kind of a mismatch of description and dollars, and we want to avoid that this year.
Yeah, just long before your time as well, Pam. But the first thing I looked at was $75,000 SCADA wiring to intakes, and that was a carryover from the previous year. And I said, "What the heck is this? 75 grand SCADA wiring to intakes? It's not even power. Oh, sorry, it's not SCADA wiring. It's hydro wiring to the intakes.
So we'll clarify.
So what are we going to
the
use
definitions.
that for? Well, that's for future SCADA.
Okay, we're
So-
never gonna
Okay.
get out of here.
So
We don't-
I'll just
Get my
have
point.
Peter briefly talk about well, not briefly, but just talk about the target solutions for fire department.
So that's RMS's records management system. It's a comprehensive system which is used by lots of different fire departments. Has the benefits of being an online system that members can access as their time permits. They can complete their courses, their training. Bob Allen can upload all the course materials onto it. He can, customize it. It'll chase after people to make sure that they do their evolutions and catch up with their their stuff. And so there's a lot of benefits to it. Long and short of it is we're giving it a demo right now. We've got a couple of week window here where they've set up a temporary site for us to try it out. And so just a placeholder for the moment.
Why would that be here and not in, if it's an annual charge, that's just an operating cost, correct?
Well,
Well,
the question of whether we want
But it's a
to.
supplemental, like it's not
It's
something
new.
we would just automatically put into the sort of what I call my base budget. These are additional things we're asking for, so they're operating and capital.
Okay,
It
yeah.
could have been in Andrew's
Yeah,
supplemental list, but
Okay.
it just
Didn't come up.
yeah.
Okay.
Like I say, this is more who's making the request rather than what department it belongs
Okay.
in. Okay.
Does this have anything to do with playbook standards compliance?
Yeah.
Okay.
Question, is this a module added on to the records management that comes out of the Surrey's computer link? after this
No,
function?
no, because the Surrey is just the FDM, so that only covers off certain aspects of your records management, your on-scene reports and that kind of thing. This covers off, this is something on which you would load up all your training manuals, your SOGs, all your custom information about all your department members, scheduling, everything. All the stuff that FDM doesn't do, that you still need to do.
How do we do it today?
Bits and pieces here and there, and some of it not being done, undoubtedly. So, this would be, let's get everything organized and properly tracked. And it ticks off a bunch of boxes for us as the authority having jurisdiction, who has the responsibility to make sure that these things are being done. And if somebody comes along and says, we want to know, show us your WCB, your OHS records. And you just, you've got it all, you can say who was there, it's all tracked in a system that's comprehensive and organized. So,
Sounds like pretty good bang for the buck.
yes.
so yeah, we'll see how it goes. But yeah,
Okay.
that others use it, so.
Let's move on.
And we'll maybe provide some more details for that next time, whether or not we need an extra computer, to just get our hands on all the costs.
Yes.
Emergency communication system is, so we've looked at a couple now.
This is the
and-
call-out system.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's more or less call-it system, and so there's emergency, and we need everybody to know that, there's a evacuation alert, or there's an emergency of some sort, or even if it's just, once a week or 2 weeks or whatever, it's conserved water because the intakes are plugged or what
Yep.
have you. We can message everybody who signs up.
Just another medium, part of our communication thing there. Does this jump the gun on the emergency plan? Or emergency coordinator?
No, because this is something that needs to be done like yesterday, and so my intent is to bring a report to the next meeting with a recommendation.
I've been asking for this since I started. Is this $2,000 a year?
Yes.
Okay.
First year would probably be half that, but for implementation this year, we'd probably be looking at 1,000 to 1,500, depending on the uptake, because we charge by the number of adult residents who sign on.
Is this an opt-in thing?
Well, it's always opt-in. You can't push it on people unless they signed up to it. There'd be an invitation.
That's not my understanding. My understanding is that the police have a way to make all cell phones in a given area ring.
We're not the police, so none of the people we've talked to are
Know how to
able to
do
do
that.
anything without people have to opt in. You invite them to opt in. There's different methodologies for doing that.
And
depending
you're
on the
charged
system.
by subscriber.
There's,
okay.
Yeah, there's different subscription methods and different ways to charge. But yeah, I'll be bringing a recommendation.
For the cost, I mean, this is, if we get an extra 100 people being communicatable with, so much the better.
I believe that there's already a good portion of the population on it that would,
on one of them, yeah.
on one of
There's-
them, yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Through other avenues, West Van Rack, Squamish, etc.
Housing needs assessment?
So that was what I alluded to earlier when we were talking about long-term strategies for fire department. In terms of long-term strategies for housing, and goes to some of the conversations we had at the zoning bylaw public information session, you know, there are opportunities, potential opportunities that we want to look at, where there could be funding available through BC Housing, different opportunities that we may have a chance to move on. But to do anything, we need to have a housing needs assessment.
Why is this not part of the OCP?
You don't need to open up the OCP to do a housing needs assessment.
No, that's true. And is this a consultant?
Yes, would be. Would be somebody. I'm going to be talking to Metro though, because as you know, they've done a lot of work recently on affordable housing strategy and different things like that. So I want to get some feedback from them, and maybe even get some assistance if I can.
Well, I mean, you know, this does talk to us long-term strategy in terms of where we think the village needs to go, but 15 grand, wow.
You pretty much 15 grand is like a starting point for consultant reports, generally speaking.
I hate the word report. I like the word plan.
It's an assessment.
It's an assessment.
Oh, assessment's even worse.
Even better. I thought you were going to say even better. Yeah, I'll
Well, let's
hope to get some assistance from
let's
Metro if possible.
let's draw a circle around that one. But okay.
Keep it for now. The records management, this is actually kind of a rebudget and a slight repurpose. We had 15,000 in the budget for summer help. It originally was a request for a part-time person. We realized after, the reason we didn't spend it, the work we wanted them to do, it wasn't efficient to train them, have them work 2 weeks and then leave. So the idea was we would request council to repurpose it to records management, which I'll talk about in a moment. And then the election happened and we wouldn't have had time to do it. So records management, there's a few pieces to that. It's electronically filing a lot of our files is becoming a requirement. We're actually meeting with RICO on Thursday to, I guess, get not a quote so much, just a demonstration of what they can do. We have maps at Public Works that need to be electronically filed, so there's that component. We've talked about the trailer. It's at capacity, so we have to look at, we haven't really had the time or the staff to go through it and decide what we can destroy. We've done that in the past by just hiring some summer help. Just even looking at the property tax files, going through those. We try to get someone in every year to just, you know, again, go through, see if there's things we can destroy. We'd like to actually start electronically filing our property tax files. And also, some of the money could go towards just a consultant to come in, and we're sort of partway through looking at how we should be filing everything, and it's sort of that component, using the money for a variety of things.
So it's a slight repurpose. It's not a big repurpose.
No, it's not a big one. It's just, I felt for transparency I should identify it.
Yeah.
That there was a reason we didn't use it last year. It was something that we budget, but staff felt after we got the budget, it wasn't an efficient use of the 15,000, and we just didn't have time to start the project last year, given what happened with a few other things like by-elections and...
Yeah. Would I presume this all gets then scanned by a service. They either bring the scanner or they take all the stuff and
Yes.
does it then make it, is it OCR'd and it's indexed and searchable, or is it just photographs? In other words, who then does the librarian work to classify it so you can find it again?
It's OCR'd, and they have a system whereby when you enter things into the scanner, it automatically then puts it into the records management system that we create. We don't have that right now. We're only the way we file our records is a bit piecemeal, which is why we need a new policy on it. So that's the consultant piece that Pam was talking about. We need to create a records management policy.
Sort of a Dewey Decimal System for Lions Bay municipality.
Yes.
It often tends to be based on the LGDA network. Mandy had sort of started the project, but it was never finished. So there's a whole bunch of different components to it, but it's just basically electronically filing, which is becoming more and more of a requirement, and just a variety of things, sort of repurposing the 15,000. So there's no budget impact, but again, I felt I needed council's kind of...
I'd like to think there's a whole bunch of information there in hard copy that if we could only search it, we could find out, you know, there's apparently a debris retaining structure halfway up Alberta that was put there by helicopter, which nobody knows anything about.
Okay.
So is that enough, 15,000?
I think for now, as a placeholder, we'll know more.
Yeah, it depends on what we're doing. This
Yeah.
was more to do the first stage, which would be to set
Yes.
up the policy and figure out the system that we're going
Yes.
to use. The actual, if you're sending things off to the scanner, like we have a scanner here that we can do general stuff, but like for the property files sake, with that whole bank of property files at the front, that actually costs, if we were to send them all away, I think the quote was about $12,000 to $14,000. So this is like the first step.
Well, again, this is the
Deciding
one
what
where
we
we need a document that tells us what we're going to get for the money. So, you know, is it a plan or
Right.
a
So the
report?
15,000 will tell us that. I mean, there'll be components that we use, it's a rebudget, and then we would come again, thinking into the future, something we would do in 2018. Plus even talking about the scanner, there would be an ongoing operating cost to that. Wouldn't be enormous, but we'll find more out on Thursday, that when we start using that feature on the photocopier, it will be an additional monthly charge.
But I presume you
Right,
then
it
have
would
to
be-
send that data file to somebody to do the OCR part. I mean, we don't have, or do they give you the server that does it here?
The scanner has an OCR compatibility built into it. Software will be able to OCR.
So why can't we start today?
Where do we put it? What file do we
It's-
put it in?
That's where we need the, what would
What
you
do we
like? We'd
need?
like the plan.
So this is 15,000 for a plan, a
No,
library
no,
plan.
it's just that's a component of it. We're using it for a variety of things. It
Okay.
might be summer help to help us clear out the
So
trailer.
will we actually get
Big
some
thing is-
results that we can
Yes,
point to and say we
yes.
spent $15,000 to knock off 5% of our paper records?
Yes, and the whole 15,000 wouldn't be spent on that. Like I say, a component of it would go to the plan, and then out of that would fall another budget request for more specific, that we need this amount of money to do these following.
The reason I ask is, you know, I'm hearing rumblings out there that we spent a lot of money on plans. Let's see some results now.
Okay. Right. Next request, additional legal. We'll fine tune this a bit more. I had actually cut the legal budget based on what we'd historically spent, but then we're recognizing after I'd done that, that the 5,000, I might just put it actually back into the operating budget, because with all the bylaw work we're using, we'll require some legal reviews of them, so that's what that was. Okay, asset management. I will be bringing a report at the next meeting for this, but the 2-minute version is, an asset management plan is now being required by municipalities. And the biggest selling feature of this is we have no choice. It's going to be a requirement to get your gas tax funding within the next couple of years. In Ontario now, who are about a couple of years ahead of us, it's actually a requirement to get any grant, you have to have an asset management plan. And in the Clean Water grant we just applied for, there was a whole section asking about, do we have an asset management plan for the asset for which we're applying? Now, they had said if we'd said no, we would have still been eligible for the grant, but I think it added a lot of weight that we could go to the AECOM plan. At that point, we did have an asset management plan for that specific item. But what I see it happening over a couple of years. The initial portion is sorry, I have some notes here. We're actually getting a quote this week to get an assessment of our buildings, because AECOM didn't do that, the useful life left in our building, the replacement value of our buildings. Because we have, when TCA came in, we've inventoried our assets, and we have the historical value. But in a very simplistic way, an asset management plan tells you what the replacement value of those buildings are. And then you then implement a plan on how you're going to replace them. And the first step on that is to sort of value our assets. Some of that work we can do internally. Public Works can do an inventory of their assets. We can do an inventory. Sort of taking another look at the TCA. It was done, all the municipalities, we had such a tight deadline to get it done. They're all revisiting that. Like I say, assigning the replacement value. We've actually had money in the budget this year to purchase the Maze module for fixed assets. So there'll be some consulting time for Maze to help us implement that. But the first step is you have to know what your assets are to put it in, and then you can also tag the replacement value. And then another big part of this is the GIS system. That as part of your assets management, you have to know what your assets are, be able to map them. So this I see as a 2-year program. To a certain extent, it really isn't optional. We are required to start doing it. So I wanted, right now the 20,000 is a bit of a placeholder. We'll know more when we get, find out how much it is to even get an assessment of our buildings. That's the part we definitely have to have done externally. But some of the other valuation of the assets we can do internally. So we see it as a staff project as well as a consultant project over this year, and then also looking at the GIS system.
Yeah, it's letting us in for long-term lots of expenditure, but this is one of the overheads that if you're going to play municipality, you have to do.
Yes.
And in housing, when we have people do this, then the next step is the capital plan
Yes.
for replacement.
Exactly.
So you start actually budgeting for
Yeah.
what.
That's right. And that's a key part of the asset
Yeah,
management.
I love it too.
Well, that's actually why they're requiring it. It's sort of, it's the
Yeah.
step up from the TCA.
Yeah.
We figured out what our assets were. We started booking them like the rest of the private sector did as assets.
Yes.
But it's historical value. Now, the piece you have to add on to that is what your replacement value is. And that's why a lot of municipalities initially didn't get fixed asset software. When TCA first came in, they wanted the dust to settle. And we fortunately were able to buy the reason we went ahead and bought it this year was we had the purchase order system, which we realized we were too small to utilize, and they gave us a very good credit for that. And then we sort of exchanged with a little bit of money.
Oh, we're
the
not
fixed
using the
asset
purchase
model.
order system?
No. No,
First time I've heard of it.
it was purchased before my time. We've had it a while, and it's
Yeah,
meant
I
for
remember
much,
approving
much
it.
bigger organizations. So, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so.
So we haven't knocked
that was it.
anything off the list. Okay, that's not good, but
Yeah, we
a
put a
few
couple
things.
of
Fire
things.
study.
No, it's not.
did we knock off the fire study?
I thought we had
No, I'm
re-examined it
talking
and
about
we
this page only.
our page.
Oh, yeah, no, yeah.
No, we're talking back money into the additional legal fees. 5,000 are going back into operating.
But I have to increase the operating budget.
Yeah, I know.
Thereby reducing the amount we have left over.
But this is being reduced.
But my purpose of this, no, I think we've made really good progress. If you remember last year, we spent a couple of meetings just trying to chop the list down. We came in with a more reasonable list to begin with the
If this is
objective
all,
of
but
coming back.
didn't I tell you, I still have a long list.
No, you don't.
Didn't I tell you that the deadline was 4 o'clock today?
I missed it? Okay, fair enough.
And then staff will come back with additional information at the February 7th. And I suspect the meeting after that, because there's a lot of additional information being requested, we'll do what we can for the February 7th. But I've got in the budget schedule a spending really to the end of February, just tweaking this, and massaging it, and figure out exactly what we want, because it is a big decision. We sort of got out on the table what we've asked for, and now we'll start fine-tuning it.
Yeah, there's nothing too much to argue about
sorry.
there. Can we just go on to the water ones
Yes,
quickly and
really quick.
then wrap up for a while? What is
The-
this water sampling stations? I like the sound of it.
So water sampling stations are enclosed sampling stations where you draw the water for your sampling to Vancouver Coastal Health, etc.
Oh, it's not automated.
No.
It's a little shelter so that when you're tapping into the water thing, you don't get wet from the rain.
It's a little shelter that prevents people or anybody from tampering with the sampling station, thereby contaminating your samples. So several times we've had samples come back testing positive for fecal or other matter. There's no control over who accesses these taps. They're open and general for the public to touch and play with.
Yeah.
So these are standard sampling stations that most municipalities are now putting out.
So no automated analysis sondes in inline.
No, you have to have a communication backbone for that.
We just approved the budget. Telecoms plan.
Triple it, and then we can talk about
Yeah, I know it's the first
throughout.
step.
Yeah.
But I mean, in the back of your mind, you have you are thinking about automated testing and reporting.
Yeah, automated testing is something that we can do for internal, but we will never get away from having to take samples to a lab. and
For
submit
regulatory,
them.
I understand.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Where are these, I don't need to know specifically, these testing stations, are they on like the main thing, or are they like at the end of a street where you'd be getting
essentially
the end?
stripped down, it's just a tap that's connected right to the main. So it's just like a garden hose connected right to the main. We are
No, but
required.
at one of the ends of the cul-de-sacs, or are they on the main?
We have 7 locations.
They're all over. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
7 representative.
Okay,
Yeah.
And their number. They may even be on the map. I think.
Yeah, they're mandated by Vancouver Coastal Health. They want us to test at certain sites within the water distribution network.
okay.
The store is one,
That's it.
which we decided we had to change the name of, if I remember correctly, because not the store. It's above the store.
Yeah, above the store.
It's end of road, number 7.
No, the general store is tested. Alberto goes into the kitchen and tests the water at the store.
Of a private business.
It's water that we're providing, so we need to make sure it's similar to the school, right? Except the school does their own testing now.
I remember having a discussion. Okay, so this 45 extra, chlorine analyzers, turbidity meter.
We have 45,000, sort of, it was originally as a placeholder, it's a pretty accurate one, in the water budget. So with a 5% increase in the water fees.
Oh, this is 45.
This is the 45. But there's something missing. There's the camera
Camera.
system for the intakes. But staff could tweak this. These don't all have to be purchased in 1 year. Like there's 2 chlorine analyzers, 2 turbidity meters, 5 automated blow-offs. So we could spread it out over 2 years and put it in the 2018 budget to bring this number down.
This also needs a communication backbone,
Sorry, which does?
the camera.
No, this does not. This is the drone
This
specialist.
is specifically drone.
Yeah, he's up at the intakes right now with staff measuring out for a pull camera system. So essentially, it's a camera that would be stored at the works yard. When there's a blockage, we would go up there with the camera, hook it up to a pulley system, and basically manually pulley it out to the intake. It would drop down and do a 360, take a look at the intake. We'd pull it back and know what's going on.
A pulley system, huh?
Yeah,
Spider cam.
And can you
Where's the
safely
other
do
end of the
this?
pulley?
at the intake.
No, that's the one at the other end.
Oh, the other end is at the gate, at the access gate.
Okay, so they can safely get to that.
Yes, yeah, that's not in any of the compromised areas.
Okay.
Yeah.
That sounds like TBD is quite a large number. Because that's not a straight line, meaning that the thing will it'll look like a ski lift.
Correct.
It'll go in and out and round and back and forth.
Yeah, yeah. It's talking to the drone, the guy who came up and did the drone. We won't ever be licensed to fly a drone without line of sight. So this is this is the next best alternative.
Well, the next best alternative is cameras on hardened poles, solar powered, with a fairly substantial battery backup to handle winter conditions, talking by cellular modem to a screen in the works yard.
Could be, absolutely.
That's going to be a lot cheaper than a ski lift.
I can't comment until I see the
Fine.
TBD.
Okay.
So the implication of this, and actually speaking of SCADA, if we do look at it and we feel there is an additional amount other than the rebudget, that would go in here. So, like I say, in the water budget, that's the one budget that's still sort of, we said we would go back to it. We have the 45,000 in there with a 5% fee increase. So,
Well, let's see what the proposition is in
Okay.
terms of the budget sheet. I think you can discern my skepticism about the pulley system.
so staff can make this fit into the 45,000 and then keep the fee increase at 5%. The option is increasing water fees a little bit, having the money run to go to reserves. I think I said $7,000 for each 1% increase.
Per point.
But that is sort of one decision that has to be made.
We've always done it in increments of 6 before. Well, I think we did 8% last.
Did we not have a water reserve, or was it a negative reserve?
It's negative, yeah.
It's in a deficit, the water.
Okay, so.
Yeah, it was a surplus.
Okay.
Sewer had the surplus.
Okay.
But
We've
very
been
small.
chipping away at it every year.
Yes,
But,
so we
yeah.
can't just
Yeah.
leave it and take it out of surplus if,
So what we could do is at the February 7th CSC, we'll have more information here. I will have an estimate because hopefully most of the 2016 expenses will be in, so I'll have an estimate of any surplus. But it's looking like the water was right on budget. A lot of puts and takes, but pretty much on
Okay.
budget this year.
which is good.
With so nothing flowing through to surplus from being under budget. Because that evening we were going to do first and second and third reading, but if we weren't quite ready
Of
with
what? Of the water and sewer
of the water
budgets?
and sewer.
Mm.
But if we weren't ready, we could have a special meeting. I'd had sort of that proviso in the in my schedule.
I think this may be a rebudget one to do the TBD thing. I mean, I fully understand the need for it. I'm the one who's been raving about it for years. But maybe we do a 6% uplift rather than 5%, and then so that gives us another 7,000.
And
That
we can make it work with that. Like we'll just adjust the number we buy to
Let's
make
see
it
what.
work.
Let's.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll give you some wiggle room, but, or put it in reserves for
Yeah.
next year.
Absolutely.
So you say 6%? Is that what you wanted to?
Well, I mean, that's
Do we have to recommend that? It's actually coming in the bylaw. Like,
You worked out
Um,
what a point equals, it's not a lot.
it's not in absolute terms. It's not a lot at all. No, it's more
do we have to
philosophical.
recommend to council tonight? I mean, it's really just the bylaw that comes with the rates in it. I don't think in the past we've done that.
Yeah, the 5 has just been a complete initial guess on your
Oh,
part,
yeah.
right? So you know,
Placeholder.
you could just as easily do 6.
Yeah, we can pass a
Okay.
motion to recommend.
And when do we have to pass this?
First, second, and third reading is scheduled for February 7th.
7th,
So
right.
there's a little bit of room if, and then the adoption was the following 2 weeks. In the past, we've needed special meetings to do it, so I don't want council to be rushed. I can present this again at the CSC on February 7th. But if we do that, then there wouldn't be time to get the bylaws ready for that evening, so we'd have to have a special meeting for either first, second, or third reading, or we could do first, second, third reading the following, and then do a special meeting for adoption.
Just trying to avoid the special meeting. There's no need. I mean, this is pretty standard stuff by now. We know what we're doing, right? Except for the TBD.
Comfortable with?
Right, well, it's the TBD
6%.
that's
Except for the
going to.
TV.
There's always a TBD.
If the TBD is too high, then we won't do it.
Absolutely.
I think you can count on that,
parameters,
yeah.
What?
So, I mean, if we can come in at 5, I would be much happier than having to go to 6
Okay.
for a TBD that we don't know whether we're doing.
Well-
or not.
I'm thinking this, the extra point is actually for reserves, just
Yeah.
to build, just to put some money back in reserves. That's a little overdue.
Because even without the to be determined, that was really just for information's sake. We already have to tweak the budgets ahead. Like, we won't be able to get 5 automatic blow-ups. We'll split it, do some this year and some in 2018.
Right.
Because we're already at 40.
So what are these numbers?
Yes.
Is that for the numbers stated? So 5 blow-offs cost
Yes, yes.
18,000?
Yeah.
So
Yes,
if we-
5, yes. So
So if we
they're-
approved the 45,000, we would get all the things you needed, or do you need more next year as well?
So essentially, I would like to see automated blow-offs on every dead end of the water main. And that would be an ongoing program, whether it's 1 a year, 2 a year, 5 a year.
But 5 costs 18,000,
Correct,
Mm.
yeah.
and that's what you need for this year.
I think what we would do is start off with 1 or 2, see how they work, see if they reach, if we get the velocity on the water. The promise for these automated blow-offs is that they achieve scouring velocity. So,
On what sort of size line?
an 8-inch,
Wow.
yeah.
Where does the water go?
We would need to figure that out. So, yeah, baby steps. But it would be an automated system that doesn't involve staff time, turning on hoses and sitting in the truck waiting for an hour to get the main clean.
But could you shut the thing down during?
It's
low water?
automatic. It turns. Oh yeah, you can turn the system off. It's battery operated.
Oh,
Yeah.
So it just goes off when it feels like it, or according to a program?
It goes off on a pre-programmed schedule, so we can schedule it to happen in the middle of the night, thereby avoiding overtime, etc.
Okay, well, this is all very sexy stuff for technicians, or technologists. I see. But there'll be some issues around chlorinated water into streams.
Each of these come with a basket that accepts a dechlorination puck. So it's all part of the yeah.
Even better. Okay.
Yeah.
So the idea is maybe 1 or 2 this year to test.
Just to test it.
Correct. Yeah.
So that would.
So why are
reduce
you
that.
asking for 5?
We just told you what 5 would cost.
I know. Why?
Why? No?
Because if it really works, you want to do it.
If it works, yeah. I mean,
You remember the
yeah.
exhortation to not ask for budget you're not going to use?
But this was just, this is a
Absolutely.
supplemental discussion. I was very clear that I put this down, but we were massaging to within the 45.
The benefits are tremendous in terms of having
No
a
doubt.
staff person sit there and
Yeah,
watch.
sure.
Yeah. So
Buy more for,
if it,
for,
if
for
it
that reason.
works, then we can resource staff to do other things. So the idea is to test them out. Drainage is a big concern. So depending on how we can get these things to work, where we can tie them in, if they work, then yes, I'd like to get
Do 5 this year. Okay.
So I think the plan was budget 5. We may not do 5 for certain reasons, but then the money would flow into
Yeah,
reserves.
we need to see what happens with the TBD and
But if they do work, it would be nice to go ahead and get 5
Mhm.
this year. So that's
Right.
why we requested
They're not
5.
expensive.
no.
I'm surprised they're that cheap.
Yeah.
So
Okay. Okay. So a recommendation to this evening's council meeting is
I guess 6% if we're looking.
Yeah, so-
to,
receive the reports at the council meeting.
Yes.
Receive the staff recommended budget with one change, and that is 6% uplift in water. Everything else stays the same for sewer and garbage.
solid waste, yes.
I mean solid waste.
So that was a 0. and this
So
was-
can we have let's treat that as the motion. Can I have that seconded? And thanks. And all in favour? Opposed? That carries. So that recommendation will go to council meeting. And then can I have a motion and a second for receiving the report in this meeting? Thanks. And all in favour? Opposed? That carries. So that was that. There being no reports, no new business, no public questions and comments. We now want to close the meeting.
Yes.
How is it quick? Because
5 minutes.
I've got a kid waiting for me for half an hour already. So can I have a motion to close and a second? All in favour? Opposed? That carries. So, okay, we're resuming. Having come out of closed at 5:45, the reporting out matters were discussed pertaining to the reasons for closing the meeting, and I'll now ask for a motion to adjourn the Strategy Committee of Council. Thank you. In a second, all in favour? Opposed? That carries. Meeting adjourned 5:45.